Hello, I'm Ocean Robin. So excited that in about 15 minutes we're going to begin our broadcast of episode 3 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. I want to thank you for joining in. I want to congratulate you, and I hope that in some way this summit is able to support you. Today our focus is healthy gut, healthy life. How to nurture a thriving microbiome. If you just joined us, we'll be starting episode 3 in about 14 minutes, and I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, welcoming you here today. We've been hearing lots and lots of comments from people on the broadcast page. Nader said, "Good morning. I'm so grateful for this program. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Nader, thank you for being a part of it with us. Carol said, "First-time writer after listening to these broadcasts for many years. It brought a tear to my eye when Ocean said, 'We're all going to die eventually. But while we're here, let's live as fully and abundantly as we can.' And I want to help my loved ones, which includes you, to do the same." So sweet, Ocean. Thank you. I know it was heartfelt and I feel blessed. Well, Carol, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. And yes, it's so important to remember that we're all mortals. You know, there's the saying that we all think we're going to live forever until we realize that we will not. And for some folks, mortality is super real. For other people, it's more of an imaginary sort of concept. But as we go through life, at some point, we face that fact that our days on earth are numbered. And then we realize that the choices we make may affect those numbers. And also the quality of our lives, not just the quantity, but the quality. And so that's really, I think, what lights me up the most is how do we optimize every precious moment we have on this earth and make the most of it so that we spend less time in pain, suffering, lethargic, almost waiting for death, and more time thriving, living the lives we were born to live, fulfilling our purpose, doing what we love. Carmen said, "I'm so excited about this docuseries, Ocean and John. I'm very much looking forward to the episode on the gut. I get candida, leaky gut, and parasites on a regular basis. I'm hoping you can give me information and tools to stop these cycles and make them stop for good. Thank you for all the information you're presenting to us." Carmen, so sorry you are suffering with candida and leaky gut and parasites, and I think you're going to learn a lot today. Our gut is foundational to every aspect of our health, and you're going to learn so much today about how to nurture a healthy microbiome. Lori said, "Can we speak to the lack of regulation of supplements? It's so frustrating that I may eat completely clean and take appropriate supplements for a whole food plant-based diet, but might be experiencing permanent damage to my health due to the fact that I might not actually be getting any supplements at all. How can we affect the political change needed to be able to assure we're getting the supplements claimed on the label?" Lori, thank you for asking. This is a controversial topic because some folks think we need more regulation of the supplement industry, and other people honestly are worried that if it was regulated like the pharmaceutical industry, then only huge corporations that can spend loads of money on studies or whatever would actually be able to bring products to market. So it's complex, but I will say this, I tend to place more trust in companies that do third-party testing of their products, ideally testing for contaminants, as well as to verify that the product actually is what it says it is. And some of them actually post those tests on their websites. That's always a good sign when you're looking to verify. Paulette said, "Question, I was diagnosed with clogged arteries. How can I go about clearing my arteries?" Well, Paulette, make sure you tune in to episode 5 coming up in a couple days because we're going to dive deep into this. At a high level, I'll say now that a plant-based diet that's rich in whole foods can help to support heart health and improve arterial function. You want to focus on foods like leafy greens, berries, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and healthy fats like those that come from avocados and flax seeds and chia seeds. These foods are high in fiber and antioxidants, which can help reduce inflammation, as well as lowering LDL cholesterol. And you want to avoid processed foods and added sugars and saturated fats and excessive sodium, all of which can contribute to arterial blockage and increased blood pressure. Again, though, that's just a super quick cliff notes. The truth is there is just a lot you can do, and you're going to learn all about it in a couple of days with episode 5. If you just joined us, we're going to be starting today's broadcast in about 9 minutes. Today, our focus is on gut health. Only recently have experts discovered the enormous connection between the health of our gut and virtually every aspect of human well-being. In today's episode, we're going to share the latest breakthroughs on research behind the microbiome revolution, and we're going to look at the complex relationship between what we eat and common digestive issues like bloating, gas, intestinal discomfort, leaky gut, chronic inflammation, and related conditions. We're going to delve into the world of the microbiome and its influence on digestion, immunity, mental health, autoimmune disease, and chronic illness. We're going to look at the potential pitfalls of modern diets, excessive hygiene, probiotic pills, and antibiotic overuse. And we're going to share practical tips and steps you can take for improving your gut health and nurturing your microbiome with all natural and low-cost solutions. It's going to be awesome, starting in about 8 minutes. We've received so many moving comments and messages. As we go through the day, please continue to post and engage in the comment section on the broadcast page. Share what you're learning, your top takeaways, your aha moments, your breakthroughs, and engage with others. See what other folks are posting. You can respond to their comments. Let's keep this a supportive, welcoming community where we lift each other up. Maureen said, how does one get enough calories on a plant-based diet? I'm underweight and need calories. Well, Maureen, thanks for asking. You know, conversations around weight often revolve around losing extra pounds, but that isn't the story for everyone. A lot of people actually struggle with the opposite, feeling underweight and wanting to gain pounds to achieve an optimal weight. The biggest reason some people are underweight is literally lack of food. For hundreds of millions of people around the world, just accessing enough calories to survive can be a daily struggle. But for those who have enough calories, sometimes there can still be issues. And if you're looking to gain weight, some of the top strategies might include strength training, especially with your upper body, so you can gain muscle more than fat. Getting enough sleep and rest time is actually significant. Making sure you eat a solid 3 meals per day. And if you struggle with appetite, adding in some snacks. You also may want to incorporate lots of nuts and seeds, avocados, beans and legumes, starchy vegetables, and soy foods. Adding in more snacks, especially high-calorie snacks like trail mix, sprinkling hemp seeds or other nuts on a variety of dishes, and never tuning out hunger signals, but instead learning to listen to them and lean into eating more. Sometimes bodies that are used to a bit of caloric deprivation kind of get attuned to that. That's the normal, and eating more can feel odd. But as you lean into it, you may find that it gets more comfortable and familiar. Be especially sure not to delay your first meal of the day. Make sure you're getting some calories in, maybe even before you feel fully hungry, to get your body going. So those are some thoughts, Maureen. I hope they are helpful to you. Pam said, I'm allergic to beans. What do I eat for protein? Well, Pam, if you're allergic to literally all beans, that can be a little tricky in terms of protein on a purely vegan diet, but it can still be done. First of all, if you can still eat lentils or split peas, they can be wonderfully helpful. They're legumes. They're not technically beans, but they confer many of the same properties. Also, peanuts. Foods like lentils and quinoa and nuts and seeds like chia and hemp and flax seeds, as well as whole grains like farro and oats and brown rice, can all provide solid sources of protein. Quinoa as well. Leafy greens and vegetables like broccoli and spinach also contribute a surprising amount of protein, although they're so high in water that you don't get a lot of calories from them either way. The key is to eat a variety of whole plant foods in sufficient quantity without eating much, if any, bottled oils or added sugars, because they deliver calories with no protein. If you're still struggling and you want to stay exclusively plant-based, then you may want to also consider topping off with a protein supplement. Lois said, do you have any protein bars you'd recommend as a healthy snack or are they all considered highly processed foods? Well, Lois, thanks for your question. A lot of protein bars and various bars of various sorts are really highly processed and high in sugar. You can always check the ingredients to see if they're made from whole plant foods. There are some, like Lara bars, that are made just from nuts and dried fruits. So those are generally going to be the healthier directions to go in. You know, as I'm reading through the comments that are being posted so far in this summit, I'm so moved. You know, we're building a community right here and right now, and we're supporting each other and taking back our food, taking back our lives, taking back our health. And as we go through this day, I invite you to continue regularly engaging in the comments section, clicking the button to see the latest ones that have been submitted, and posting your thoughts, your reactions, your feelings, any insights you hear and want to capture or share with others, and of course, your questions. Dana said, so appreciative of the information presented in your summits. Thank you for responding to the how questions. I feel like some structure in proceeding with my whole foods plant-based journey will be very helpful. I'll look into the Whole Life Club information. Awesome, Dana. That's great. For those who don't know, yesterday Dana was asking for guidance and structure to support her journey, and I mentioned that Food Revolution Network has an ongoing membership community. We call it Whole Life Club, and this is for sustaining, implementing, and optimizing your healthy lifestyle long term. When you get an empowerment package from this summit, you get an opportunity to join Whole Life Club with a 30-day free trial and then about a 60% discount ongoingly. And it's an amazing program. This is where we're seeing the deepest transformations for large numbers of people in the FRN community. So if you're interested in staying with this long term, it's a great resource you may want to know about. Another great resource I've just got to mention again here is Powered by Plants. This is our brand new forthcoming cookbook, and the publisher just sent us our first copy. So here we go. I think it's just so beautiful. This is a recipe book. It's nutrient-loaded 30-minute meals to help you thrive. And it comes out October 29th, but you can get an advance copy now if you want to. Well, you won't get it now, but you can order it now, and you'll be one of the first people to have it. And we're just so excited because this dives deep into nutrition and how you can optimize nutrition with a whole foods plant-based lifestyle. And then it also has the recipes to make it super delicious to do so. If you just joined us, I'm Ocean Robbins, sharing some welcoming words. We're going to be starting episode 3 in the Food Revolution Summit docuseries in just a couple of minutes now. We're continuing to receive so many powerful and heartening and inspiring comments from folks who are joining in as we go through this day. And you can be one of them. So post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. Also, a reminder that after we wrap up today's broadcast, I'll be on live with you again to share comments and takeaways and breakthroughs and insights and reflections and respond to questions that are coming in through the day. And then after that, we'll go on replay, and you can watch it again if you want to, but you'll also have access to 3 more extended interviews. Every single episode in this docuseries is little highlights pulled from extended interviews where we go deep into the topics with some of the top experts in the world. 45 full-length, in-depth interviews are available with the empowerment package. And every day of the summit, you can watch 3 more of them during the replay window. We also have 3 more recipes of the day and recipe demo videos where Nicole D'Andrea Russert, Food Revolution Network's lead dietitian and recipe developer, demonstrates in her own kitchen how she prepares one of the recipes of the day. So there's so much wealth of resources here available in this summit for you. But now it is time for us to move to episode 3 on gut health. Here we go.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is impactful.
The food revolution is transformative.
Compassion.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is life.
The future of medicine.
Long overdue.
It's time.
It's time.
It is time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is our future.
It's power to change the world.
And it's available for everyone.
It's time for a food revolution.
It's time for a food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Now is the time.
I'm John Robbins,
And I'm Ocean Robbins.
and you're watching the 2024 Food Revolution Summit.
In this episode, we're going to focus on gut health, digestion, and how you can achieve a happy and healthy microbiome and a digestive tract that functions beautifully so the food you eat can really support your mental health, your physical health at every stage of your life.
We start with some questions. How does the complex process we call digestion actually happen? How does the food you eat get broken down into its basic constituents and then transported across your gut lining into your bloodstream, where it can then wind up in the cells that then can use it as a source of energy?
Good questions. And do the microorganisms inside you, who make up your microbiome, actually produce substances, including critical vitamins, that your body requires but can't make on its own?
How does your body distinguish between serious infection with a dangerous virus and colonization with a harmless one? How does your immune system know when to rally the troops to defend you and when to ignore benign intruders that don't pose a threat?
Let's start with a look at the basic components of your digestive tract and what they do for you.
The digestive tract is this long superhighway. It's about 30 feet long, if you could lay it all out, and it's got different parts that are all very specialized in what they do. We think about it as three major parts: the upper, the mid, and the lower. So the upper is our esophagus. That's that tube that carries food down to the stomach. So the esophagus and stomach are the upper part, and they're primarily involved in mixing and churning the food to get it ready for absorption. Absorption primarily happens in the mid part of the GI tract, which is the small intestine, the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. And that's where the food gets absorbed across the gut lining into our body, where we can use it as an energy source. The lower part of the digestive tract is the colon, and that's where the food gets fermented, and also where liquid gets absorbed back, not nutrients, just liquid, so that you can end up with a nice formed stool. So each part of this digestive tract is really unique and different and special in terms of the types of cells, the enzymes, the different processes happening across the way.
So what does our gut do? Well, it's got a lot of functions, but maybe one of its most important and fundamental functions is it takes the food that we eat, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the legumes, the nuts, the seeds, all that good stuff, breaks it down and turns it into the building blocks of your healthy body. So every day, Ocean, when you wake up in the morning, about 3 ounces of you is brand new. Your body is constantly repairing and building and synthesizing. Where do we get the fuel to build those little blocks every single day? We get them from our food. So on a very basic level, to be able to ingest and digest our food efficiently and comfortably is an essential human trait. So there's that. And then you look at the gut health of the general population in countries like the United States, the UK, Ireland, and any other country that has embraced what we used to call the standard American diet or standard Western diet, which is now becoming the global standard diet. This low fiber, low fruit, low vegetable, high processed food, high junk food, high fat, high animal product diet is a perfect recipe for terrible digestive health. So to eat and digest our food comfortably and efficiently is an essential human trait. But right now you look around, what do you see? About 1 in 5 Americans is troubled on a daily basis by acid reflux, GERD. Acid suppressing medications, one of the most commonly prescribed medications in the United States. A medication that switches off one of your natural digestive processes in order to try and keep a lid on chronic digestive symptoms. We've got diverticular disease affecting perhaps 50% of people age 70, putting people in hospital, costing the US economy billions of dollars every single year. Diseases like fatty liver disease, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, colorectal cancer affecting 1 in 20 US adults in their lifetime. So this tells us that there's something wrong. There is something wrong.
Bloating, gas, intestinal discomfort, cramping, all of these things are your GI tract trying to communicate with you. Heartburn, going knock, knock, knock. And I always remind people, your body has your back. Your body is trying to prevent you from doing something ruinous to your health.
A lot of people today are suffering from bloating, gas, constipation, bad breath, and other even more serious digestive problems.
And it turns out that one of the most primary and important keys is to feed your beneficial gut bacteria the right kinds of foods so that they have what they need to thrive. And that's where prebiotics come in. Prebiotic fiber is a type of carbohydrate that we can't digest, but that is food for our beneficial gut bacteria who thrive on prebiotic fiber.
Some of the foods that pack the greatest prebiotic punch are dandelion greens, asparagus, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic and leeks and onions, and green leafy veggies, and also legumes like beans. These are all fabulous prebiotic sources.
Prebiotics are the food that feed and nourish the bacteria. Not just any food, but the particular foods, plant foods, fibrous foods, and of course fiber is in plants and not in other products. So these fibrous foods that really encourage the growth of healthy bacteria. And so some of my favorite prebiotic foods, for example, would be onion, leeks, garlic, asparagus. These are all really fantastic. And then, of course, there's some whole grains too that are what we call microbiota accessible carbohydrates, legumes. So I think of beans and greens really as the food that we should be feeding our gut bacteria. So that's the prebiotic.
We need dietary fiber. And I would say that if that could be considered another food group, or at least a macronutrient, I'd be all in. Along with fat, carbohydrates, and protein, I'd love to say dietary fiber because it would raise it to a level of importance where it needs to be. But dietary fiber is by definition carbohydrate, and as such we can characterize it in that group. But it's fundamental, and it's progressively declining in the Western diet. And that's very, very threatening because it's critical for gut health and for the health and functionality of the various types of bacteria that reside within us, upon whose health and functionality we depend in order to stay healthy from multiple perspectives, including metabolic health, including things like obesity and diabetes, but certainly as it relates to the brain as well. So that's why we need much higher levels of dietary fiber. It's been estimated that our hunter-gatherer forebears may have consumed as much as 100 grams of dietary fiber on a daily basis. We now, hope that people might get 20 grams of fiber in their diet. So we've got to do our very best through our choices to increase the consumption of dietary fiber. Primarily, dietary fiber comes from fruits and vegetables. When I say primarily, I should have used the word exclusively. There is no dietary fiber in any animal-based product whatsoever.
There's no fiber in any animal product. And there's also very little, if any, in the ultra-processed foods that are so very common today. And this is important for many reasons. The lack of fiber in our diet results not just in fewer types of microbes, which would be bad enough, but also in a decrease in the beneficial byproducts that our gut bacteria produce when they metabolize our food. If you're going to have a healthy microbiome, if you're going to have a flourishing and diverse collection of beneficial bacteria in your digestive tract and elsewhere in your body, clearly one of the central keys is to eat more plant fiber.
The USDA recommends that adults get at least 28 grams of fiber every day. But that's actually only a bare minimum. It's not nearly enough for optimal health. But only 5% of Americans get even that much. This is really sad because we know that people who eat plenty of fiber have a lower risk of all kinds of diseases, including heart disease and type 2 diabetes.
If you're consuming enough dietary fiber, then your gut will be healthier because your microbiome will be home to trillions of microbes that will help you digest and metabolize what you eat. And they will protect you against diseases, and they will train your immune system to recognize and to reject pathogens. And one of the surprising things about your microbiome is how swiftly responsive it can be to what you eat.
It's true. There was a study conducted at the National University of Singapore which found that eating kiwi fruit increased the presence of beneficial bacteria in people's microbiomes by 35% in, get this, just 24 hours.
The composition of your gut bacteria will vary greatly depending on what you eat, and is highly and immediately responsive, often within a matter of hours after eating.
I'm sure a lot of people who are watching right now are wondering, how can I modify my microbiome to reduce disease risks and optimize health? Let's find out.
It's awesome to include like chicory root and asparagus and inulin-rich foods, but really what it's about the whole dietary pattern. I wouldn't want people to focus on one individual plant in order to improve their gut microbiome, because what we know with the secret when it comes to eating plants to improve your gut microbiome isn't one specific plant, it's the variety of plants. So a few years ago, the American Gut Project analyzed the gut microbiomes of 11,000 citizen scientists, predominantly from the US, also from the UK, Australia, and a few other countries. And they looked at their diet, their lifestyle, their medications, their physical exercise, etc. And then they looked at the health of their gut microbiome. And what they discovered was that the number one dietary predictor of a healthy, diverse, functional, robust gut microbiome was the diversity of plants in your diet. Variety. But as you know, if you're eating a varied, healthy, plant-based diet, you are achieving a plant diversity and a gut microbial diversity that's becoming increasingly rare in countries that have embraced the standard American global standard diet. And that's part of the reason why vegans are 80% less likely to get diverticular disease, substantially less likely to get problems with gallstones, substantially less likely to get fatty liver disease, why plant-based diets offer substantial protection against colorectal cancer and various other cancers of the digestive system. So it's about the variety. That's the key message.
It bears repeating how important it is to eat a variety of whole plant foods. You want the whole orchestra playing. Dr. Desmond referred to the American Gut Project, which is the largest human microbiome study ever undertaken. And it involved people from 45 different countries. And this enormous study found the number of plant types in people's diets to be the primary factor in determining the health and diversity of people's gut microbiome. And in this study, the people who ate more than 30 different types of plants per week had gut microbiomes that were far healthier than those who ate 10 or fewer types of plants per week. It's crystal clear that the diversity and the number of plants you eat will determine the diversity and the number of bacteria that can grow in your gut.
This is true because each type of plant provides its own unique type of fiber. Even plants that are very similar, like cauliflower and broccoli or kale and collard greens, are distinguished by their different kinds of fiber. As a result, we need many, many different kinds of fiber in order to feed the great diversity of microbes that we need to be optimally healthy.
I sometimes think we might be better off if, instead of counting how many grams of fiber we're consuming or how much protein or how many calories, we focused instead on counting the number of different plant foods that we eat in a day, because that turns out to be key to having a thriving microbiome.
The microbiome is the gut bacteria that live in our colons. In fact, so far that we've discovered, the human colon is the most biodense environment on planet Earth. Nowhere are there more bacteria, there's more life per unit centimeter than the human gut. It's amazing. Nowhere else in the animal kingdom, nowhere else on planet Earth have we found more life concentrated. And the question is like, well, what's it all doing down there? And, it's kind of a black box, right? And we didn't really know because many of those bacteria are unculturable outside the human body. And so you didn't even know what was in there until we had these genetic fingerprinting techniques, which technologically allowed us to be like, oh, look at the DNA and say, oh, there's this bacteria, there's this, and we found thousands of bacteria. And then we can start, okay, now, are some bacteria more associated with one health condition, another health condition, another disease condition? And then, instead of just that correlation, we can actually prove cause and effect with these so-called fecal transplant studies, where you can actually kind of swap microbiomes between people and actually show that you can transfer disease characteristics just based on what's happening in the gut.
Sounds like a crappy study.
It is indeed a crappy study.
Fecal transplants may sound gross, but they are in fact legitimate medical procedures in which feces are taken from a healthy donor and then introduced into a recipient patient's GI tract. This procedure can actually control a serious infection called C. difficile by adding healthy bacteria into the recipient's intestines.
And there is now also the possibility that fecal transplants might be helpful in treating other conditions, including inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, obesity, liver disease, neurocognitive disorders, and more.
One study found a particular bacterial strain in the microbiomes of marathon runners. And when that bacteria was implanted into the microbiomes of mice, the mice could run faster and longer.
That's amazing. So is this something we should consider implementing more widely?
Well, first of all, when we're talking about fecal transplants, and you used the phrase a moment ago, say, this is a little bit icky for some, but let me just reassure your viewers, everybody poops, okay? To eat and to digest food is a basic human trait. Everybody chews, everybody swallows, everybody burps, everybody farts, everybody poops. So if we could get comfortable with that, it would save me a lot of time at my clinic. And also it would help a lot of people because people are so embarrassed to talk about their basic digestive functions that often they don't seek help. And if something is going wrong, they don't want to mention it to their family members. They don't even want to mention it to their doctor. So look, everybody poops. Get comfortable with it. The science on fecal microbial transplants is getting more and more interesting. So what are we doing? We know that the gut microbiome is a control center for human biology. We know that healthy people have a healthy gut microbiome in certain circumstances. We know that in certain diseases, we have an unhealthy gut microbiome, a dysbiosis. So can we take poop from a healthy person and transplant it into an unhealthy person and therefore make the unhealthy person healthy? Well, the science is emerging that suggests maybe we can. And certainly for treating gastrointestinal infections like C. difficile, it is now a licensed treatment for C. difficile because you help to restore the healthy gut microbial balance just long enough that your body can take care of this unpleasant infection. And there is emerging science in conditions like ulcerative colitis, also in coronary vascular disease and metabolic syndrome. But I got to tell you, the benefits that those studies show are generally temporary. Mm-hmm. Why? Because in most of those research studies, they are just giving a fecal microbial transplant. You have got to get to the root cause. A healthy plant-predominant diet, a varied diet, good sleep, exercise, time in nature, time with other people. Those are really the secrets to developing a healthy gut microbiome. So it's not that I'm like totally against all of the gut microbial transplant literature. It's fascinating. And I think ultimately we are going to get there. But if in 5 years' time we have FMT programs available at every major hospital in the US, and it isn't coupled with a gut microbiome, healthy diet and lifestyle program, I'll be really disappointed.
Yeah, it's like it gets things started,
correct,
but then just the bacteria will starve to death if we don't feed them.
Yeah, it's got to be the whole package. And to be honest, the benefits we've seen thus far in human studies, outside of a few niche conditions like C. diff infection, maybe ulcerative colitis, we need a lot more data before we start recommending this.
So it's not a real problem of getting the intestinal difficulties solved by giving the right kind of bacteria. The problem is solved by putting the right food in the intestine and the bacteria will come and live there. There's a population of people, and these are your rural Africans. A lot of my work is based upon studies of these people back 50, 60, 70 years ago, when heart disease was unknown. No breast cancer, no colon cancer, no hemorrhoids, no deep vein thrombosis, no gallbladder disease, no heart attacks. And what people are studying there is they're studying the poop of rural Africans with the idea that somehow they're going to make a pill that has African poop in it and sell it to people. No, what you need to do is you need to eat what the rural Africans ate. And then, well, you might want to add some bacteria, but you only have to do it once because if you feed them, they're going to stick around. And you get the right food, which is starches, vegetables, and fruits in the intestinal tract, and the problems will be solved.
We hear a lot about probiotic supplements for gut health. But it turns out that while it's fine to introduce a beneficial bacteria into your system, if you aren't eating in a way that feeds and nourishes these beneficial bacteria, they'll just die out rapidly and won't do you any good.
That's probiotics. We've also spoken about prebiotics and the foods that pack the greatest prebiotic punch, like dandelion greens, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, leeks, jicama, and onions. Prebiotic foods are important because they contain high amounts of a particular kind of fiber that supports beneficial gut microbes.
And as important as prebiotics and probiotics are, there is another class of microbe-related compounds that may be even more important, and those are called postbiotics. But unlike prebiotics and probiotics, postbiotics are not substances you can ingest. They are tremendously significant substances that are produced by the beneficial bacteria in your gut.
A postbiotic refers to the products that the bacteria are making. Sometimes they're referred to as bacterial metabolic products or bacterial metabolites, but those refer to these chemical substances that the bacteria are producing when they are fermenting this fibrous food. And a classic postbiotic are short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids are essential, not just for the health of the gut, but for the health of our immune system. So sometimes with patients, I really think hard, how can I make this sound more scientific and complicated and sexier than eat more plants? But that is ultimately what it boils down to in terms of what's really keeping the gut healthy, what's modulating the immune system, what's creating a healthy microbiome.
We eat healthy foods containing fiber, resistant starch, these so-called prebiotics. We feed these healthy bugs that then, in exchange for having this nice place to eat with all this wonderful food coming down, they produce these so-called postbiotics, which is the production of the metabolism of these bacteria, fed prebiotics, and some of these postbiotics, like short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, are then absorbed back through the colon wall into our bloodstream, circulate throughout our body, cross the blood-brain barrier, and can have effects throughout the body, beneficial effects throughout the body. And so the microbiome helps explain why a healthy plant-based diet can affect so many different organ systems at the same time.
As a gastroenterologist, I'm very aware of the impact that dietary change can have on our digestive health. And it's very, very true that a healthy, varied, plant-based diet is the perfect recipe for excellent digestive health. And a lot of what I do is helping people to move more towards a plant-based diet or even an exclusively plant-based diet. And what they discover is that this is a great, healthy way to eat for their gut health. And when you see those transformations happening in front of you at your clinic, I mean, our medications can do so much. But when you look at the dietary changes, the results you start seeing in your patients, the transformations in gut health.
I mean, you can imagine, gut health, presumably the microbiomes have something to do with gut health, and they absolutely do. But what was so surprising, I think, to people is that the microbiome also determined, how bad your asthma was, your immune system, your pneumonia rates, your mental health. And it turns out that there's this communication between our microbiome and the rest of our body.
90% of your immune system is in your digestive tract. Now, why is that? Your digestive tract is one of your largest environmental exposures. Your gut covers a surface area, perhaps about, the science varies on this, but probably about half the size of a tennis court. Okay, that's the whole surface area of your gut. And for a large part of that surface area, there is one layer of human cells and a thin layer of mucin, this little clear viscous fluid, separating the contents of your gut, which is what you choose to put in there, from your bloodstream, from your heart, from your lungs, from your eyes. So it's got to have an incredibly robust immune system, which knows how to deal with, pathogenic bacteria and other products that may enter your digestive system. So by fostering a healthy gut microbiome, and having a healthy diet, you're doing a whole lot to benefit your immune system. We also saw research a few months into the pandemic showing that individuals, and I'm sure you saw this research, okay? It was on frontline health professionals, I guess people like me who were working on COVID-19 wards as physicians during that first wave when we didn't know anything about how to treat this disease, and we had our personal protective equipment, etc. But still, during that first wave, about 20% of health professionals contracted COVID-19. Mm-hmm. But there was data published just maybe 6 months into the pandemic that showed us that frontline health physicians who described their diet as vegan or whole food plant-based, who contracted COVID-19, were 78% less likely to have a severe disease course. Whereas individuals who described their dietary pattern as low carb were 3 times more likely to have a severe disease course when they contracted COVID-19. And I think that was a very real demonstration of how your diet impacts on your gut health, impacts on the robustness of your immune system.
And so food becomes important. All these vitamins become so important. Things like zinc become really important to offset some of those coughs and colds and things like that. And you can get that through a supplement or through food. But all really to say that we want the strongest immunity. And here's a great tip, things like red bell peppers and kiwi fruit have some of the highest levels of vitamin C.
Right.
So, get it from your citrus fruit and things like that, but get it from all of these other plant fruits.
Most people don't know there's actually more C in peppers than there is in oranges.
That's correct.
Many people have heard about the perils of a leaky gut, where the protective junctions in the intestinal lining become compromised. When this happens, undigested food particles leak into the bloodstream where they elicit an immune response, often leading to systemic inflammation. When your intestinal barrier is compromised, you become susceptible to a spectrum of health challenges.
It always amazes me that the lining of our guts, that which separates what's inside our digestive tract and what's inside the rest of our body, is, as Dr. Desmond mentioned a moment ago, just a single cell thick.
Yes, that really is amazing. And it's one of the reasons why leaky gut syndrome has become so common. When we don't eat the right food, we're prone to it. And certain medications also increase the prevalence of this problem. Dr. Desmond also mentioned a study of doctors and nurses who were treating people with COVID-19 who developed COVID-19. In that study, those health professionals who were eating a whole foods plant-based diet were nearly 80% less likely to have a severe disease course. And at the same time, those health professionals who were eating a low-carb diet were 3 times more likely to have a severe disease course.
Why would that be?
Well, microbiologists have analyzed the connection between a person's gut health and their prognosis in viral illnesses. And they have found that a leaky gut worsens the severity of infection by allowing the virus access to our blood vessels, our livers, kidneys, and hearts through our compromised digestive tracts.
So what causes a leaky gut? And what can someone who has a leaky gut do to repair it?
Leaky gut refers to an increase in intestinal permeability. So if we think back to that gut lining, the selective lining, it's like a fishing net with tiny holes. And sometimes that fishing net can get damaged and the holes can get big. And now things can pass through the net that normally couldn't before. So what damages that net? There are a couple big categories. And again, many of them involve the medicine cabinet. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, drugs containing ibuprofen, so that's Motrin, Advil, Anacin, Aleve. Those drugs are probably number 1 on the list for increasing intestinal permeability. And while this is happening on a microscopic level, I see it on a macroscopic level when I'm doing an endoscopy on somebody and I see an ulcer. That's what an ulcer is. It's a big hole in your intestinal lining. But many people who take these drugs have tiny little holes that are either microscopic or just small little erosions that aren't as clinically significant as an ulcer. Antibiotics are problematic, steroids. You can have damage from radiation in people who have been treated with radiation. Alcohol is another huge one that can damage that gut lining and increase the permeability. Stress. There have been studies showing that stress increases intestinal permeability. In fact, excessive exercise does too, but just temporarily. So if we take somebody like a marathon runner, we see that typically before the race, the intestinal permeability is different from after, but that's just a temporary physiological state. And of course, food. So highly processed diet, artificial sweeteners, these are all things we know that emulsifiers in food, a lot of the things like the soy lecithin and the gums and so on, the carrageenan that are used in food to create a certain consistency and a certain mouthfeel are damaging to the gut lining. And we do have evidence for some of these substances that this damage to the gut lining can be associated with certain autoimmune diseases like Crohn's disease, one of the ones that I treat in the gut. So yes, an increase in intestinal permeability is real. What is more controversial is this idea that leaky gut, which has become a popular way of describing an increase in intestinal permeability, is this idea that a leaky gut is responsible for all these different things, for brain fog and fatigue and weight gain and autoimmune disease and so on. And again, this tendency to draw a straight line. And what we find is that there is often a commercial interest here. Somebody creates a test that may be reliable or not to measure something and then says, if this thing is abnormal, you have this condition, and here are several $100s worth of supplements. So I see a lot of that. And if you do indeed have a clinically significant increase in intestinal permeability, the key is to look at what created that problem and to stop it. So to remove the food, the practice, or the medication that is damaging your gut lining. It's not to take a pill and think that this pill is going to somehow repair your gut. It's almost always to look at why. Why did this develop? Am I taking too much Advil? Am I drinking too much alcohol? And am I eating too many ultra-processed foods? Am I not managing the stress in my life and my gut is kind of freaking out?
What about bone broth? Some people use bone broth thinking it's going to help sort of line that gut lining. Is it helpful?
I recommend broth to my patients, but I recommend a broth made from plants that are high in inulin, in this fiber that we know is very restorative to the gut bacteria. It's a very simple broth. You chop up leeks, onion, and garlic. You can throw in some scallion if you like. I'm Jamaican, so I use pepper too, habanero pepper. But the basic thing is leek, onion, garlics. You saute them, a little olive oil, whatever you like, and then you blend them up with some water. And I have found this to be incredibly restorative for my patients with severe inflammation from autoimmune disease, with Crohn's, with ulcerative colitis. Often the gut is in a state where it can't handle a big leafy salad. And for the patients who are really sick, when they blend it up, I have them strain it so that there's less fiber in it if their gut is really inflamed. But I have found that that can be really helpful. So much of the time, it's just the idea of liquids that are helpful. And I don't think there's anything magical about a bone broth. I mean, people talk about collagen and the collagen in the bones and so on, but I think often just liquids in the GI tract are helpful because they allow the digestive tract to rest a little bit from that very, very labor-intensive process of digestion. And I do recommend, again, these leek, onion, garlic, high in inulin, high in resistant starch, that is really feeding those microbes in the colon.
Our culture rightly recognizes that some bacteria can cause disease. But there is also now a compelling body of evidence that has become utterly convincing that the trillions of microbes that call our bodies home are primarily helping rather than hindering us. In fact, most of them have functions and perform services that are critical to our health and survival.
Without our microbes, our immune systems wouldn't be able to protect us from infections or cancer. Our heart, lungs, and liver wouldn't function properly. We wouldn't be able to digest food, absorb nutrients, or synthesize vitamins and growth factors that our bodies just cannot make on their own. And our mental health would suffer because we'd lack the critical neurotransmitters that microbes produce.
And yet, even as dependent on a healthy and diverse microbiome as we are, many of us are eating foods that feed unhealthy bacteria rather than the beneficial ones. For example, the more eggs, liver, beef, and pork someone eats, the more of a toxic substance called TMAO will be found in their blood and in their urine. In fact, if you eat these animal products, you'll get a bump in TMAO levels within hours. And this is important because elevated levels of TMAO are strongly associated with many serious medical concerns.
People with higher levels of TMAO in their blood have more than twice the risk of heart attack, stroke, and other serious cardiovascular problems. And TMAO levels are higher in people with cognitive impairments and in people with dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. In fact, elevated TMAO has been linked with everything from type 2 diabetes to dementia to arthritis to kidney disease to even polycystic ovary syndrome.
So you really do not want to have elevated TMAO if you can help it.
Yeah.
And you can help it.
You can. The good news is that people who eat a plant-based diet produce very little TMAO. In fact, when researchers at the Cleveland Clinic fed steak to vegans, they found almost no increase in their TMAO levels.
Now, this is really remarkable. When people for whom meat is a regular part of their diet consume animal products, and particularly those that are high in choline, like liver and egg yolks and red meat, their TMAO levels tend to rise dramatically. But when vegans eat these very same foods, their TMAO levels do not elevate at all. Why would that be?
Well, it's because the diets of vegans do not foster the growth of the specific gut bacteria that produce TMAO, while the diets of meat eaters do exactly that. The reason you can feed liver or egg yolks or red meat to vegans and their TMAO levels will not rise is that a vegan diet doesn't feed the microorganisms that make TMAO.
I don't want to pummel our viewers with statistics and studies, but some of this research strikes me as really fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of another study that looked at the differing effects of animal and vegetable proteins on the gut microbiota in overweight and obese people. We're sometimes told that animal protein is superior, but these researchers found that a higher intake of animal protein leads to a decrease in beneficial gut bacteria and an increase in the harmful microbes that are characteristic of obesity.
The health-giving properties of the microbiome of a person eating a whole foods plant-based diet is so favorable that there are now physicians who are recommending that people with elevated TMAO or with obesity or who have a certain kind of range of intestinal problems get a fecal transplant from a vegan.
Well, that might help, though not for long if the recipient of the transplant resumed eating the standard American diet.
So if you choose today to eat kind of, let's go for the extreme, okay? The kind of standard American, we've got a beef burger, we've got a white processed bun, we've got no fruits, we've got no vegetables, we've got no whole grains. So we're eating a low fiber, processed, meaty, fatty dish, cheeseburger and fries. Okay, so we eat that food. The human body is incredible. The digestive system is incredibly adaptive. Your human digestive system is going to work on that meal and get every bit of nourishment it can get out of it. So the proteins, the fats, the carbohydrates that your body needs, your body will find a way to get that nutrition out of even an unhealthy meal. But what you're then left with in your bowel is the residue. And that residue travels down through your small intestine, where all the absorption occurs, and is delivered to your large bowel, the colon, the home of the gut microbiome. That residue from that meal now becomes food for the microbes in your gut. And what you're feeding your gut microbes determines which microbes will flourish and become predominant within your gut microbiome. Unfortunately, if you've chosen to eat that high meat, low fiber, plant deficient, processed grains meal, what you are feeding your gut microbes is residual animal protein, bile, no fiber, a recipe that encourages unhealthy bacteria to flourish. So you get bacteria that flourish in a high bile environment, bilophilic bacteria, which produce secondary bile acids, which are carcinogenic. You get the bacteria that flourish on carnitine from red meat, which produce trimethylamine, which enters your bloodstream, gets converted to TMAO, a pro-inflammatory molecule. You get a deficiency in the production of short-chain fatty acids, which are incredibly beneficial substances that your body needs to thrive. Okay, so the next day, you've seen this video or you've tuned into some of your awesome content, and instead of having the Big Mac meal and fries, you decide you're going to have a dish that's built with fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes and quinoa and all that good stuff, the foods that humans have been thriving on for millennia. Okay, so what happens? You eat the food. Once again, your digestive system goes to work. You digest that food, you extract the protein, the carbohydrates, the fats, and of course you're getting all the great phytochemicals and antioxidants and, you know, all those incredible benefits that we get from our plant-based food, okay? You're getting the vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, the antioxidants, the all that good stuff. But there's still a residue. So there is a residue that is now delivered to your large bowel after that meal. And that residue, again, becomes food for your microbes. But now the residue is completely different because we don't have residual animal protein. We've got a variety of fiber, a variety of microbiome available carbohydrates. We don't have all the bile that was needed to digest that high-fat meal. We've got polyphenols from all of the berries and fruits that we're eating. So now we're choosing to feed different microbes. We are feeding beneficial microbes that produce short-chain fatty acids and vitamins. You got your butyrate and your acetate and your propionate. And it has a very real and measurable impact on your gut health, promoting healthy cell metabolism, DNA repair, anti-carcinogenesis. You're creating a gut microbial environment that is conducive to good gut health and good overall health. And more than that, you're creating those changes very, very quickly. Even within hours of consuming that meal, we can measure beneficial changes in your gut microbiome. Within 28 days, we're seeing changes in the structure and function of your gut microbiome. We see the beneficial short-chain fatty acids going way up. We see the harmful secondary bile acids going way down. We can measure something called the gut mucosal proliferation rate, which is a measure of how quickly your gut is having to repair itself. We see that rate going down because your gut isn't having to do so much repair work. It can happen within 28 days. So just imagine the benefits you can get in 28 weeks, 28 months, 28 years. It's just absolutely fascinating.
There are so many benefits and advantages to eating for a healthy microbiome. One that isn't talked about as much as perhaps it should be is the effect that our diets have on the smell of our breath.
It's true. And in fact, no less of an authority on breath than the Colgate toothpaste company has published a remarkable article on their website titled "Why Vegetarians Don't Have to Worry About Bad Breath." The article informs us, and I quote, "Bad breath, or halitosis, is a problem that affects 40% of the adult population at some time in their lives. Poor oral hygiene, gum disease, and smoking all contribute to bad breath, but your diet also plays an important role. Following a vegetarian diet or reducing your meat intake will help prevent those unpleasant odors."
That's really from the Colgate toothpaste company?
Yes, it really is. And it turns out there's some science to back up what they're saying.
The reason people have horrible halitosis is because of the food that they eat. It's caused by eating animal foods. And let me tell you the basics on this. When we eat animal foods, we're eating foods that are high in sulfur. Animal foods have a high content sulfur-containing amino acids like methionine and cysteine. These break down into sulfuric acid, which is a very potent acid. They also break down into hydrogen sulfide, which stinks. That's rotten eggs. That's the pits, sulfur pits at Yosemite. It's a repulsive smell, is sulfur. Again, rotten eggs. So animal protein has a high content of sulfur, which smells. This sulfur goes into the small intestine. It's absorbed into the bloodstream. That stink then comes out of the skin and causes body odor. That stink comes out of the breath. It's not just the animal food in your mouth. It's the fact that the venous blood returns to the lungs and you exhale this sulfur. So even if you brush your teeth really carefully or take a whole bunch of mouthwashes, you're not going to stop the stink because it's coming from deep inside.
We keep hearing to eat more plants and less or no meat and eat more fiber. But some people who eat more fiber, and particularly fiber from beans, can develop gas and bloating and other forms of discomfort. What is going on that could cause this? What is happening in these people's microbiomes? And is there something they can do about it?
So what your good bacteria are doing are they're fermenting the fiber. They're eating the fiber and churning out these beneficial byproducts. And if you think of other kind of fermentation processes, the gas is, if you're fermenting beer, the presence of little bubbles, it shows it's working. That's what fermentation is, producing this gas. We will say, wait a second though, what about bloating, right? What about passing gas? Well, what happens is you feed the gas-producing bacteria, and the presence of gas in your colon fosters the growth of gas-eating bacteria. So there's bacteria that actually consume the gas and can produce these postbiotics with it. And so right at the beginning, if all of a sudden you go from, milkshakes and cheeseburgers with basically no fiber, all of a sudden to a really healthy diet, so you feed these bacteria and they're like, woohoo, fermentation, go crazy. They make all this gas, but you have yet to develop the other good bugs that eat the gas. And so there's this transition period where you have excess gas. And so it's critically important. You just got to wait it out, and you have to have to get that balance of good bacteria. And so the gas producers and the gas consumers are back up at the same level, and then those problems go away. And you can show this. You give people beans, and then versus a control. There's a number of different studies. One was carrots. You can show it's actually a minority of people that actually experience problems with gas, and for the small percentage that do, within 2 weeks, it goes away in almost everybody. So you just got to really stick with it. And if it really is a problem, look, you can go slow. You used to be like, I'm going to add a teaspoon of chickpeas to my daily diet, and I'm put on salad, put it whatever. Okay, so then let's move on to. There's some legumes that are a little more or less gas producing than others, but the critically thing, you have to stick with it. And actually, so the gas is showing, look, it's working. Right? It's just a matter of getting over that hump until you can kind of balance out your microbiome.
Beans are fabulous sources of protein and fiber and a host of other critical nutrients. But they also contain raffinose, which can cause gas and bloating. One thing that can help you get over that hump is to soak your uncooked beans for 24 to 48 hours, rinsing them several times a day and changing the water each time before cooking the beans. Doing that removes most of the raffinose and leads to less gas and less bloating.
If you've ever been to a gastroenterologist or complained to your primary care doctor about any sort of heartburn, indigestion, or abdominal discomfort, there's a good chance you were given a prescription for an acid-blocking medication or told to buy an over-the-counter version of one. These acid blockers, also called proton pump inhibitors, have been mass marketed to the public in ads that show people comfortably gobbling a late-night cheeseburger or chowing down an entire pepperoni pizza without the slightest complaint from their digestive tract.
These drugs are among the most commonly used drugs in the world, but studies suggest that as many as 70% of the people taking them get no benefit whatsoever. And for those who take these drugs long-term, the side effects can be serious or even deadly. Proton pump inhibitor side effects include kidney problems, bone fractures, and heart attacks, and many other severe problems. There are today thousands of lawsuits over proton pump inhibitors.
In 2020, the first year of the pandemic, a large national health survey involving over 53,000 patients found that people taking a proton pump inhibitor once a day had double the risk of testing positive for COVID-19. People taking one of these medications twice a day had almost quadruple the risk of becoming infected. And not only were people taking these drugs much more likely to test positive, they were also much more likely to have severe outcome.
So these drugs are lucrative for the drug companies, but they can damage people. Is there a better way to deal with common GI tract symptoms like gas and bloating and cramping and digestive distress?
So when it comes to the GI tract, these signs, the gas, the bloating, the cramping, the digestive distress, is our GI tract trying to tell us something? And the goal is to figure out what it's trying to tell you. In the case of something like heartburn, which we know is not related to overproduction of acid at all, but is caused by that sphincter, that valve, that muscular structure between the esophagus and stomach that opens when the food is coming down and then closes after. So heartburn is caused by that valve inappropriately opening. Why? Because we've eaten too large a meal and our stomach can't handle the capacity, because we've eaten a high-fat meal and that slowed down the stomach emptying and now the valve is popping open, because of alcohol or caffeine or chocolate or all these things that act on the sphincter. But instead, we say, oh, too much acid. Here's a pill, block the stomach acid. The downstream effects of that, of potent acid suppressors like proton pump inhibitors, is that now you have no stomach acid. You can't digest food properly without stomach acid. It messes up the gradient of the microbiome. You can't protect yourself from pathogens that get in through the mouth without stomach acid. There is a 33% increased risk of dementia in people taking these drugs long-term because it causes a problem with that gut-brain communication. So rather than take a drug that is very effective, and yes, sometimes there is a clear indication for these drugs. You have an ulcer that's not healing, etc. But most of the time, these are symptoms that are caused by diet and lifestyle. And rather than addressing them we're treating them with pharmaceuticals. So if we think about these symptoms, there's some general categories. You might be eating late at night. The GI tract has a bedtime. It's most active early in the morning when the sun rises and least active once the sun sets. So if you are now consuming the majority of your calories after dark, you're setting yourself up for bloating and discomfort because your GI tract is asleep and you're asking it to digest food. How much you're eating. If you're eating a large amount of food, again, you might be creating a problem because it's just too much food to digest in one sitting. And we know, again, the content, the macronutrient content, high-fat foods require much more time to be broken down and digested than a simple carbohydrate. And so typically, when a high-fat food hits the stomach, there's a chemical message that is sent to a part of the stomach called a gastric pacemaker. And that slows down the rate of contraction of the stomach. And that slowed rate of contraction means you feel full and uncomfortable longer because it's taking longer for the food to get down. So it's important to think about the medicine cabinet, the food, not just what we're eating, but when and how much. And then, of course, to think about our lifestyle. Are we really sedentary? Our GI tract is a muscular organ. And like our biceps or triceps or hamstrings, it requires movement for it to function properly. So if we are not moving, typically neither are our bowels. We're going to have a lot of stasis in the GI tract. Things are not going to be moving at an appropriate pace from north to south, and we're going to end up bloated and uncomfortable and gassy because not only are the products of digestion moving slowly, but the gas that's being produced as a normal byproduct is now moving slowly and building up. So it's important to think about lifestyle with things like how we're moving. Stress is another huge one. When we are in a state of stress, in this fight or flight state, this is typically when blood is diverted to our brain and to our large organs, large muscles like the hamstrings and so on, so we can run away from the danger. And a lot of that blood flow and those resources are diverted away from the digestive tract. So digestion can come to a relative standstill. And so we have to think about how we're managing our stress throughout the day and what does that mean for our digestion. And there are lots of other factors too. So I encourage people to be a medical detective. And it's the basis for all the educational work I do with the books, et cetera, is to say, what is your GI tract trying to tell you and what can you do to solve this problem?
While a variety of dietary interventions can provide relief for different people, a common dietary recommendation for people suffering from intestinal distress is what's called a low FODMAP diet. What is a FODMAP?
Well, FODMAP is an acronym that refers to foods that are high in a particular type of carbohydrate that can be difficult for some people to absorb. When you eat the foods that are considered to be FODMAPs, those foods may not be as well digested by the time they reach your small intestine as other types of carbohydrates. While this is not a problem for most people, it can cause symptoms for those with especially sensitive digestive tracts.
Now, the problem here is that FODMAPs are found in a lot of foods that you might be used to eating regularly and that are actually highly nutritious and are actually really good for your microbiome, like garlic and onions, apples, and legumes. The initial restriction phase of a low FODMAP diet completely eliminates these foods.
Now, generally, people who follow a low FODMAP diet do so for at least 3 or 4 weeks, which is usually long enough to figure out if removing the entire class of foods helps them to feel better. The idea is that if a person has seen improvement in their symptoms, they can then carefully start reintroducing FODMAP-containing foods one at a time to see which ones trigger their symptoms.
One of the reasons that the restriction phase of the low FODMAP diet should be temporary if possible is that it can eliminate a lot of the healthiest foods on the planet. Some people on a low FODMAP diet make the mistake of eating a lot of meat and low FODMAP dairy products, which have been shown to contribute to inflammation. So this can in turn fuel many serious health conditions and diseases and even create additional intestinal distress. And of course, if your intestines are inflamed, it's going to be very hard to successfully reintroduce FODMAP-containing foods.
So what's interesting about the FODMAPs, it should be more of a process than a diet. And it was really designed to kind of take people back to a place where they could rebuild their gut, their microbiome, and then we slowly begin adding foods in on the FODMAP, with the exception of the D, which is disaccharide, which is dairy. But what's happened is it's become kind of a crutch for an unhealthy diet. People are eating this Western diet, and they have disrupted microbiomes and irritable bowel syndrome, and they're not feeling well. And so obviously when you take some of these fibers out of their diet, the FODMAP foods, you take those out, they're left with eating more unhealthy, low fiber foods, and they feel better because they've had a disrupted microbiome. And then they add back in, beans or broccoli or some of these foods that have fiber, and they feel bad again. And so it just reinforces the idea that I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, they have disrupted microbiome and an unhealthy gastrointestinal system that can be healed through the right intervention, and that it will get better, and that diet is the solution. Not just either staying on a FODMAP diet, which is difficult, and not healthy long-term, and not going back to the regular diet. And so, it's stepping back, and sometimes we have to pull back on a lot of those foods and begin just slowly feeding things that the microbiome can begin to process. It's sometimes a smoothie because it's processed can help. Steamed vegetables can be helpful. Sometimes it's starting with juicing and allowing that microbiome to begin healing. Some foods like, sweet potatoes and mangoes and some of these other lower FODMAP foods can be wonderful ways to begin rebuilding the microbiome and exposing it to some fiber without causing that disruption. And the nice thing about adding some of these kinds of healthy foods, they taste good, and it reinforces these are healthy foods, they didn't irritate my stomach, and I'm going to keep going. And they actually start to feel better in the process. And over the course of several months, they'll rebuild that microbiome population. We can begin adding small amounts of some of these others. Maybe it's lentils before we do beans, well cooked, and they process those, they feel good. And so we can start rebuilding that beautiful garden that will handle some of the healthier foods down the line.
The market worldwide for probiotic supplements for gastrointestinal health is huge, and it's growing rapidly. But there is a problem. Most of these products contain only a few strains of microorganisms. They often have vast amounts of the species they provide, but still, they provide only a very limited number of species, while there are tens of thousands of different species of bacteria that make up our microbiomes. As well, just swallowing a pill containing zillions of a particular beneficial bacteria does not guarantee that those microbes will take up residence and flourish in a person's microbiome.
The probiotic industry, of course, makes extravagant claims for the benefits their lucrative products provide. But how valid are those claims?
Probiotics refer to the bacteria themselves, whether the live ones that are already in our gastrointestinal tract or the ones that we're taking from the shelf. But what I want to remind people is that definition of a probiotic, when we think about a product, the full definition is live bacteria that when ingested confer a benefit to the host, to us. And it's that second part of the definition, the confer a benefit, where sometimes things go a bit awry. So just taking a product off the shelf that says it has live bacteria and ingesting it is most of the time not conferring any benefit at all. So that's something for people to keep in mind.
Oh, so I get asked about probiotics and fermented foods all the time. They're two separate issues, okay? So probiotics are a pharmaceutical product. They're pills, powders, potions. They're also big business. So the probiotic industry is worth maybe $60 billion a year. My approach to probiotics is that you don't need them. You just don't need them. There's a lot of health claims around probiotics. I've yet to see a paper that convinces me that adding a probiotic to your diet can even come close to the gut microbiome benefits of making a healthy shift to your diet. We spoke earlier in this interview about the dramatic changes you can see in your gut microbiome within even hours of making a switch to a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet, and how those benefits build within 28 days. So we see dramatic changes. The changes that we see with probiotic supplementation are really difficult to measure. So I don't generally recommend them. And that makes sense, right? I mean, humans and the gut microbiome have been hanging around together since the dawn of human evolution. Our gut microbiome is ancient. It's an integral part of being a human. When you were born, Ocean, for that first moment of life, the microbes in the environment began to inhabit your digestive tract. That first human touch, that first sip of milk, that first breath of fresh air, your gut microbiome begins to develop. Your gut microbiome is an integral part to developing a healthy GI tract as a little growing baby. Your mother's milk contains specific carbohydrates which were not there for you, but were there to feed your gut microbiome. Really important, okay? And then as we go through adult life, our gut microbiome remains incredibly important, an incredibly important and versatile player in our health. So that's how humans have evolved. But somehow, in the last 10 to 15 years, the probiotic industry has sought to convince us that in order to have a healthy gut microbiome, we need to buy their products and consume them every day. And they can be pretty expensive.
So we have very little data that a probiotic in the average person is going to lead to any changes in the gut microbiome. So I'm going to start off with that. Very little data. We have specific instances and conditions that are fairly rare. So a condition, for example, called necrotizing enterocolitis that we typically see in infants where there's severe inflammation in the GI tract. And again, this can be a condition that can be fatal. We have some good evidence there for probiotics. We have some evidence for traveler's diarrhea for probiotics and some other areas. But we don't have evidence that the average person taking a probiotic is better off. Just as we don't have compelling evidence that the average person taking a multivitamin is better off, but we do know for certain nutrient deficiencies, if you have low iron, if you have low vitamin D, if you have low B12, these are situations where replenishing these vitamins and minerals, etc., can be really helpful. So it's a little bit similar here. And again, it's really difficult to get these bacteria taking up residence in the GI tract and reproducing in a way that's changing the microbiome. That is a continuous change. I mean, we can change it for a day or two, but to get continuous change, we need ongoing reproduction. And for that, we need to feed the microbes differently. So whether we're talking about feeding our own microbes, or we're talking about feeding a microbe off the shelf, or we're talking about feeding a microbe that came from somebody else's stool, we really still need to think about how we're feeding them.
What I'm saying here isn't controversial. In fact, the American Gastroenterology Association recommendations on probiotic use in adults for gastrointestinal health pours a lot of cold water on the health claims that you often read around probiotics. So I very, very seldom, if ever, recommend them.
Almost every single microbiome researcher today is saying that fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi and pickles are microbiome rock stars. They deliver both live probiotic bacteria and prebiotic fiber that nourish beneficial gut bacteria.
A study by researchers at Stanford University found that eating fermented foods regularly resulted in substantial reductions in over a dozen different inflammatory compounds in the body. It also resulted in more diversity of gut bacteria. The more fermented foods people ate, the greater the number of microbial species that bloomed in their guts.
And unlike probiotic supplements, fermented foods have been part of the human diet for a very, very long time.
Fermented foods, so our krauts, our kefirs, and our kombuchas, these have been around for a long, long time in human civilization. Of course, they were developed before refrigeration. This was ways to preserve your fruits and vegetables and your cabbage and everything so you could have them during the winter months, okay? And they have these unique taste profiles, and they've certainly come back into vogue in the last few years, which is great because they're so tasty and they add their complex flavor patterns to your already healthy plant-based diet. When you look at a fermented food, the clue is in the word fermented. It's fermentable. So we're adding bacteria to that food, which begin fermenting, the same process that happens in our gut microbiome. So that fermentation process is giving you readily available short-chain fatty acids, but it's also producing unique prebiotic fibers and unique microbiome available carbohydrates in that fermented food that you're just not going to get anywhere else. So it's a great way to improve your gut microbial diversity even further. And there was a really interesting study published just last year, which looked at the impact of a high fiber diet and a high fermented food diet on the human gut microbiome, and revealed for the first time that fermented foods do bring their own unique benefits that you may not simply get by eating a high fiber diet.
I think fermented foods are a plus. I certainly include kimchi, other fermented foods in my diet. I think this is a really wonderful, natural way to emulate what our ancestors did. Now, our ancestors didn't have refrigeration and pretty much ate what they could find on the ground, or maybe if they were lucky once in a while, they'd kill an animal, they would eat that too. But pretty much our diet ancestrally was based upon what we would find on the ground. And let's be clear, oftentimes what you find on the ground is rotting fruits and vegetables. And when you're feast and famine, when you are at risk for dying of starvation, you're going to eat stuff that's already started to rot. And what is rotting? Well, rotting is fermentation. When a food begins to rot, bacteria in that food are digesting it and replicating and fermenting. That's what that process is. And as such, fermented foods have always been a part of the human experience, at least as it relates to our ancestors. And it was and is a way that we continue to colonize our gut with those bacteria. So I'm very much in favor of the idea of fermenting food, as well as buying foods that are fermented, things like kimchi and sauerkraut, etc., and consuming them. I think that's a real handy way of further inoculating the gut with good bacteria.
One of the hottest new product categories on natural food store shelves is what are called prebiotic sodas. Some deliver as much as 9 grams of prebiotic fiber and 2 to 5 grams of added sugars in a fizzy and delicious soda. Others deliver as little as 2 grams of prebiotic fiber and larger amounts of added sugars. Are these sodas healthy?
I don't think they have benefit. Typically, they have artificial sweeteners in them, which we now know that even stevia, very disruptive to the gut microbiome. Not only can they decrease species diversity, create more pathogenic bacteria, but it turns out they can interfere with the communication pathways between the bacteria that are essential for a lot of these bodily functions. Because gut bacteria aren't just involved in digesting food. They're involved in synthesizing vitamins, synthesizing neurotoxins, training the immune system, turning genes on and off. So lots of important function. And it's critical that these bacteria can communicate. So we have good evidence that a lot of these non-nutritive sweeteners interfere with that process. They typically also have a lot of chemicals in them. Some of them not as many chemicals as traditional soda, but these are food-derived products. They are not food. And that is very different from eating an apple or some kimchi or some kale. And so I'm very wary of these bioengineered foods. And many of them meet the criteria for ultra-processed foods, which we know are problematic, not just for our gut, but also for cognition, etc. So I understand that people, you get tired of just drinking water all the time. But I think it's really important that people understand that these are not health foods.
There are a lot of marketing claims made for stevia and monk fruit and other no-calorie sweeteners. Food manufacturers say they deliver a sweet flavor without added sugar calories, and so they can bring down obesity and all the other negative effects that come with added sugars. If you believed them, you'd think we can have our cake and eat it too.
Yes, and a little bit of these sweeteners probably won't hurt you. But there is compelling evidence, as Dr. Chutkan just mentioned, that stevia, as well as saccharin and sucralose and aspartame, are damaging to the microbiome. And there's another problem with some of these sweeteners that is not widely recognized, and that's that nearly all stevia and monk fruit products sold today contain erythritol. In fact, erythritol is the largest ingredient by weight in most powdered stevia and monk fruit products. It's used to add bulk to and reduce the price of stevia and monk fruit products, but it's been linked to increased rates of strokes, heart attacks, and death. In one study, people who had higher blood levels of erythritol had double the risk for both heart attack and stroke compared to those with lower levels.
And there's still another problem with all non-caloric sweeteners. While they do contain very few, if any, calories, studies have consistently found that they still promote weight gain. And while a debate rages as to whether some of them also cause cancer, most of them are clearly linked to increased cravings for sweet foods, increased dental cavities, as well as negative changes to the gut microbiome. Xylitol and other processed sugar alcohols like sorbitol and maltitol and isobalt may actually be good for fighting cavities, but they can give you indigestion if you consume them in too large amounts.
It gives you pause, doesn't it? I think the prudent thing is to realize that these aren't ingredients we should be consuming regularly, if at all. I generally stay away from non-caloric sweeteners, including stevia and monk fruit. As somebody once said, The person who tries to get something for nothing generally winds up getting nothing for something.
So true. And now I want to talk about another group of substances that, when used rightly, can brighten our lives considerably, but when overused, create major problems for our microbiomes.
You're referring to antibiotics?
Of course, I am indeed. Ridding our bodies of nasty microorganisms has been a goal of medicine at least since the invention of the microscope. Antibiotics may be the signature medical achievement of the 20th century. Drugs like penicillin and streptomycin have saved millions of lives. No one wants to bring back the killers of yesteryears. No one wants to see outbreaks of cholera, tuberculosis, or bacterial meningitis. But even when antibiotics are saving our lives by killing dangerous pathogens, they're also massacring multitudes of our beneficial gut bacteria.
There are no antibiotics that only kill pathogens. And to be clear, antibiotics are one of the greatest inventions in our medical history. They have saved millions of lives over around a little less than a century they've been around. So as I talk about antibiotics and the effect on the gut and the gut microbiome, I want to be very clear that I'm very grateful as a physician that we have access to these powerful drugs. That being said, there's always also no question that they're currently being overused, and that is leading to problems, not just for the individual, because antibiotics, while they may be killing a pathogen, they're also destroying droves of our healthy, essential gut bacteria. And as bad luck would have it, these essential bacteria are typically more susceptible to the antibiotic than the pathogen. So this is a problem for the individual, but it's also a problem for society because we're creating drug-resistant microbes that are now not susceptible to any antibiotic. And we're seeing that a large percentage of infections that people are dying from, they're dying because the pathogen is resistant to all the antibiotics because we have so overused antibiotics, not just in our medical practice, but in the food industry. We know that somewhere between 50 and 80% of all the antibiotics sold in the US are used in the animal industry for fattening of the animals and other purposes. So it's a huge problem, this issue of antibiotic resistance. Again, not just what it's doing for us as individuals, and the connection between reducing microbes and dementia and autoimmune disease and all these things that we're seeing, as well as for us as a society.
You may have noticed that if you take the time to smell your food, to appreciate it, and to savor the anticipation of it, you'll secrete more saliva. And that's important because saliva is critical to the digestive process. Salivary enzymes, it turns out, help to break down food. And in conjunction with chewing, they make it possible for you to absorb and use the nutrients that you consume.
And it's not just saliva. In response to smells and tastes, your stomach also goes to work preparing the way. It produces the gastric juices and specific enzymes that will be needed to digest the particular foods that are about to come in. So by the time your meal reaches your belly is ready and waiting. Even before you take your first bite, you're engaged in an extraordinary interactive process that can literally make the difference between critical nutrients being absorbed or going in one end and out the other.
When you take the time to savor your food, to smell it, to chew it, to enjoy it, you're shifting the course of your digestive destiny. You're setting yourself up to absorb more efficiently what you're eating.
Even before the food enters our body, digestion starts. So the smell of food, the sight of food, for some people, even the thought of food can start to stimulate those digestive enzymes that are released by the salivary glands. And the purpose of those salivary enzymes is to start digesting the food or getting it ready for digestion right when it gets into our mouth. So we actually claim the mouth as part of the digestive tract. Then it travels down the tubular structure, the esophagus, and that it travels by peristalsis, sort of like how certain worms move, and and of course gravity helps, so it gets down to the stomach. And then in the stomach is where a lot of other enzymatic digestive processes start to happen. So for example, enzymes like gastrin and stomach acid that are secreted there. And the food also gets churned up into small particles called chyme. And then that gets moved down into the small intestine where the actual nutrient absorption happens. So again, you can start to see that these are all very specialized functions that are unique to these different parts of the intestine. Chewing is important to break the food down into these very small particles so that the enzymes can act on them. And so that process, you can think of it as either part of the digestive process or maybe a pre-digestive process. But the food particles have to be broken down into very small pieces so that the enzymes can work on them and the nutrients can be extracted, both the macronutrients, the protein, fat, carbohydrate, and the micronutrients. And so chewing is a first part of that process of making chyme, which is that the products of digestion in very small pieces. So it's really important that we chew our food well so that we can also stimulate those salivary enzymes to start working on the food and breaking it down. There are incredible health benefits to eating slowly, to eating mindfully, to thinking about the food. I would add to being grateful for the food also, because just as the sight or the smell of food can start to induce that enzymatic process, you want to make sure you have enough time for those digestive enzymes, literally those juices, to start going to be able to work on your food. And so mindful eating, slow eating, in terms of satiety, with so many people struggling with being overweight and having obesity, it's also important to give your stomach a chance to feel full. When you're just sort of guzzling your food and eating really fast, you might continue eating beyond the point of satiety, where your stomach feels full and you know that you've had enough. And you think about the stomach capacity. Our stomach is about the size of a fist, and full, it's maybe an open fist. But you can shovel in a lot of food quickly in a way that overwhelms the capacity of the stomach and not really feel it. If you're eating more slowly and mindfully, you're going to feel that satiety as the stomach expands and know that you're full, or maybe even a little bit before you're completely full and know that this is probably a good time to stop eating. So that's another important reason why it's important to eat slowly, mindfully, and I think gratefully.
I've been thinking about why I don't always eat slowly, mindfully, and gratefully. And I've realized that more often than I like to admit, I take food for granted. I can so easily forget that for most of our ancestors, access to enough food was the paramount struggle of their lives.
I'm reminded of the old saying that she who has forgotten the language of gratitude can never be on speaking terms with happiness.
So true, so true. Although more times than I care to remember, I've lost touch with my feelings of gratitude. I can't tell you how much energy I've wasted with stupid resentments and pointless grudges. My tendency has been to give thanks only when things seem to be going well. When things aren't proceeding according to my preferences, I sometimes lose sight of my blessings. I forget that healthy food is precious. I take it for granted.
I'm sure you're not alone in that, and this is one of the reasons why people have traditionally said grace before meals. The saying of grace can be a way of connecting to our sense of gratitude and connection. It's a way to slow down, to relax, to let go of all the busyness and worries of the day and open to the food that we're about to receive.
There are many ways to establish peace and appreciation as the primary tones of our meals. One simple method is to just take a few moments to observe silence, maybe holding the hands of others at your table, if that's comfortable.
Or if you're eating alone, you can take a moment to hold your bowl or plate and smell the aromas and enjoy the peace of your solitude.
What's important is to find ways to bless your meals that feel comfortable and good to you.
In our family, we've got a particular mealtime tradition that brings us together in, I think, a sweet way. Sometimes we gather around the table and each person has a turn to share one rose, one thorn, and one bud from their day. Roses are a beautiful thing that happened today that we're grateful for. A thorn is something sad or painful or hard that's going on. And a bud is something we're hopeful about or that we're looking forward to. So we go around the table and everyone shares just one rose, one thorn, and one bud. And it gives us a chance for everyone to get some attention. And sometimes we learn more about each other's days and feelings and what's really happening for everyone in the family. It kind of builds connection.
That's a really beautiful tradition you've created, Ocean. And it reminds me of the old saying that among friends, joys shared are doubled and sorrows shared are halved. A process like rose, thorn, and bud provides a chance to share joys and sorrows and can be really bonding for a family.
Yes, it really can. I grew up having family dinners with you and my mom together every night, and I'm so grateful for that. We often shared about our joys, And our sorrows too.
Yes, I remember that well. And now we're learning that eating gratefully, eating mindfully, eating slowly, taking time to appreciate our food is good for our microbiomes. And it turns out that our microbiomes aren't just inside us, they're on our skin too.
It's interesting when we talk about microbiome. I mean, technically, the term can mean the microbiome, can mean the bacterial constituents, or even beyond bacteria, in any particular environment. So there's actually a skin microbiome. You have certain bacteria on your skin that live on your skin. There's an oral microbiome, which can determine whether you get cavities or bad breath, or right. And so typically we're talking about the colon microbiome because it's the most diverse and most and kind of largest by number. But you're absolutely right. There's a skin microbiome, and so there's people with like atopic dermatitis and other conditions that can be helped by changes. They seem to be brought on by changes in one's microbiome. There are changes with aging that happen that actually create a certain smell. There's actually a name for it in Japanese of kind of the smell of old people. That's because you have a different microbiome and actually break down sweat compounds and produces different odor than it does before. That's one of the reasons that there was a study showing that people who moisturize their skin regularly can drop their levels of inflammation in their body. And we think it's because of that barrier protection, because we didn't really evolve using soap. I mean, soap is wonderful for hygiene, but it can't kind of strip away some of the natural oils in our skin. And it's possible that decrease in barrier function may play a role in causing inflammation throughout the body, and so that's one of the roles that may be playing. So the acne is a matter of the skin microbiome. These little particular bacteria that form acne are living on your skin all the time. It can be affected, and the oral microbiome produces the leads to the formation of nitric oxide when we eat nitrate-rich vegetables like beet juice or beetroot or arugula or other dark green leafy vegetables. So it matters what bacteria. We don't want to. So by using an antiseptic, antibacterial mouthwash, we're actually reducing our ability to lower our blood pressures by eating greens and things like that. And so it's amazing, this kind of symbiosis that we and other kingdoms, the bacterial kingdom, have established for kind of mutual benefit. But so we should not kind of take that for granted.
How we interact with our environment is a really important player in our skin microbial health, but also our gut microbial health and our overall microbial health. And actually, you asked about how we interact with our environment, and excessive washing and excess hygiene may be an issue. Of course, look, we're very lucky as humans now that we have clean drinking water and clean fruits and vegetables, so we're not contracting dysentery on a weekly basis. I mean, hygiene has brought a lot of benefits to humans, but sometimes I worry that maybe we've gone a little bit too far down that road, and that's just one aspect of the kind of 21st century lifestyle that is able to deplete our microbiome and deplete our gut microbial health. So if you spend a lot of time reading the research on the things that help to build a healthy human microbiome, it's really interesting that you read these papers and you list out the habits and you realize, well, these are the same habits that build a healthy human. Okay, so if I was going to give you maybe 5 or 6 tips to ensure your gut microbial health, what would I tell you? Okay, eat a healthy, plant-based or plant-predominant diet with a variety of plants. Spend time in nature. Where do our microbes come from? We know that individuals who live in rural settings have a more diverse and healthy gut microbiome than those who live in cities or in built-up industrial environments. So spend time in nature. Get out to the park, get in the garden, dig some soil. Don't be afraid to spend time in nature. Any natural environment is a good idea.
As we near the end of this episode, I want to return to the topic of fiber and summarize some of what we've learned, because fiber plays such a critical role in your gut health. As humans, we lack the enzymes to digest fiber, but not all the fiber we eat comes out the other end. Our gut microbes have the specialized enzymes that we humans lack. In deconstructing the fiber we've consumed, they create powerful anti-inflammatory compounds called short-chain fatty acids, including, notably, one called butyrate. These short-chain fatty acids are a medicine our bodies crave.
And another one of the many important things we've learned about fiber is that each type of plant provides a unique type of fiber, and that each type of microbe in our guts likes its own specific types of fiber. As a result, we need many, many different kinds of plants to feed the diversity of microbes that we need to be healthy.
Yes, which makes it all the more important that 95% of Americans are not getting anything close to an adequate amount of fiber. In fact, the average American gets less than half the recommended amount, which is already set far lower than what would be optimal for human health. Only 1 in every 20 of us meet even the daily recommended fiber intake.
Part of the reason for that is that there is no fiber whatsoever in any animal-derived food. There's no fiber in any form of meat or dairy, and that includes yogurt and kefir, and there's no fiber in eggs or in fish. So obviously, the more meat, dairy, and eggs we eat, the more deficient in fiber we will tend to be. Plus, it's the healthful, fiber-rich plant foods that feed our beneficial gut bacteria, while meats and other animal products tend to promote unhealthy gut bacteria.
The National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey is an enormous survey that links Americans' eating habits and their health. And according to the data from this survey, the less fiber people eat, the more likely they are to be depressed. And the differences are dramatic.
We've had the extraordinary good fortune in this episode to hear from some of the most prominent and most knowledgeable gastroenterologists in the world. But it is still the case, unfortunately, that most gastroenterologists, like most other doctors, don't see a connection between what people are eating and the medical problems they have.
Most gastroenterologists, like most doctors, do not ask people what they're eating. And so, although this seems in some ways probably to your community very basic, well, of course it matters, it's taken a little bit longer to permeate into the medical community. But the nice thing is that we're seeing scientific evidence, we're seeing studies and interventional studies that both short-term and long-term that are showing that what we eat can make a difference.
Any diet that gets you to cut down on ultra-processed foods is going to have beneficial effects. Ultra-processed foods form about 60% of our calories. Most of our diet is junk, right? So junk food, most of the stuff we eat. But if you go from this much terrible food down to this much terrible food, well, no wonder you feel better, right? You're eating fewer donuts, you're feeling better, right? But imagine having the best of both worlds, where all you're eating is good foods, where it's just like, well, I, stopped, hitting my foot with a hammer and I used a smaller hammer now. Okay, that's good. We're making progress. I have a less inflamed foot because I'm using a smaller hammer. Okay, why beat yourself up at all?
That's a good question. Why beat yourself up at all?
I think a lot of us just don't realize that certain things that are normalized all around us are actually causing our body's injury on a daily basis. But of course, here in this summit, we're learning the truth so that we can do something different. And I just want to take a moment to appreciate that you've been inspiring people to do something different for almost the entire time that I've been alive. You've been at this more than 40 years now. That's a long time to do anything, and an incredibly long time to be a leading advocate for dramatic change in some of our most basic habits. So what's kept you motivated to carry on with this work for so long? And what do you love about what you do?
Oh, so many things. I love seeing people adopt a whole foods, plant-strong diet because I love seeing people become healthier on every level. I love seeing their minds become clearer and their creativity becoming more powerful. When people eat more consciously, they don't just become physically healthier, they become more present and more alive. They're able to walk through the world with their hearts more open and to give from a cup that is full rather than from a cup that is empty. I love seeing people commit to a healthier way of life because I love seeing the light in their eyes become brighter and the joy in their hearts spreading to their loved ones, and eventually, as the ripples continue to widen, spreading in some way throughout the whole Earth community. Really, I consider it a privilege to do the work I do. It's a joy to see people learning how to lighten their ecological footprint and become more vital and vibrant at the same time. The food revolution is about changing our food system and our eating choices so that they can come to be more in alignment with our own good and the greater good. And it's also about attuning our lives to the greater purposes for which we have taken birth. It's about being our best possible selves.
I love that. Being our best possible selves so we can give our gifts and hopefully find ways to more deeply enjoy our lives. In the next episode, we're going to go a lot deeper on one of the most critical aspects of enjoying our lives, which is feeling good and also looking good. We're going to explore beauty, radiance from the inside out, and how your food and lifestyle choices affect your hair, your skin, and your nails. We'll see you there. Let's do this.
Thank you so much for sharing in that powerful episode. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. And do make sure to refresh the comments using the button provided there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Lydia said, "My husband has severe ulcerative colitis. He recently spent 2 weeks in the hospital, lost 35 pounds, and was informed he may need his colon removed. He's only 38 years old. He eats a lot of meat, whereas I am whole food plant-based. This is so frustrating to me, and I try not to impose my lifestyle decisions on him, in sickness and in health, right? But what if it's self-inflicted sickness? We keep hearing it's genetic, and monthly infusions are the solution. I'm thoroughly disheartened. I planned a date night for tonight where we'll watch this episode together. I hope the message is received by him and he implements some changes so we can live a long, happy, healthy life together." Lydia, first of all, I just want to send so much love to you and your husband. I hope that you are able to gain some resources here and that you're able to share this with him and that you can live a long, happy, and healthy life together. And I'm so sorry for the pain that he's experiencing and that you're experiencing because we are so impacted by our partners. And I also appreciate your desire to support him in his sovereignty while also being true to your sovereignty, which says you have a right to speak your truth and want your husband to be healthy and well so you can live a long, healthy life together. So sending you love in the journey, and I do hope that he's able to learn some things and you're able to learn some things together that help you to be in this journey as a team, as allies, connected, and also hopefully making the wisest possible choices. Maxine said, "Hi Ocean, catching you live again today, but I did catch up yesterday. I don't not only have heart disease, I have non-alcoholic fatty liver and erosive gastritis, as well as IBS and other digestive disorders. The last year has been very hectic for me, including 2 major operations, one having a stent fitted after an 80% blocked artery, and during all this, I've moved country and left a partner of 10 years. This food revolution and final move to whole foods plant-based diet is so good for me, and I am staying positive and feeling much better due to this." Maxine, wow, what a lot you have been carrying and struggling through. Well, we're glad you are here. You are in the right place, and we want to support you. I hear that you caught up yesterday with the replays and you're joining in live today, which is awesome. We don't want you to have to worry about missing a thing because this is the right place and the right time for you. Especially tune in for episode 5 coming up in a couple of days. But really, it sounds like everything we're talking about here is super relevant with the various things you're facing. We want you to have it all for life. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. Our team will be in touch with you. Congratulations. You'll have all the episodes for life, but also you're going to have all of the extended interviews so you can dive deeper into the specific topics that are most relevant for you with the experts, so you can really explore. And also you'll have the transcripts with, by the way, source links to studies cited. So if you're somebody who likes to go deeper or understand more, you can do that too. Congratulations. Our team will follow up with you. Susan said, I'm loving this series as I have enjoyed the previous ones. John and Ocean, you're so inspiring, and I thank you for sharing all this knowledge. I have a question about nuts and seeds. Is it best to soak them to remove toxins, but also for the body to better absorb them? Some are organic, but a lot of them are not. Well, Susan, thanks so much for asking. So there's a couple pieces to this. So soaking certain phytate-containing plants first can reduce the concentration of phytates, and phytates can impair the bioavailability of certain minerals and even vitamins in certain foods. So soaking has been shown to reduce phytate levels in legumes and in grains. Therefore, it's an optimal best practice to soak legumes and grains at least overnight, if not even lightly sprouting them for a few days, pouring off the water every 12 hours after the first overnight of soaking before you cook them. That can be optimal and ideal. It's what we do in our family. However, when it comes to nuts and seeds, there was a 2020 study that measured almonds, hazelnuts, peanuts, and walnuts to see if soaking them before eating them enhanced bioavailability, and they found the difference was very minimal, if any. So soaking nuts or seeds doesn't seem to have particular benefit, although if the seeds are involved and they are starting to sprout, that may have benefit because sprouting is awesome. Now, in terms of toxins, it sounds like you're mainly worried about pesticide exposure. The good news here is that you usually won't find a lot of pesticide contamination on nuts or seeds because they grow inside of protective shells and husks that tend to capture pesticides that might be sprayed on them. So I'm not saying organic isn't optimal for a lot of reasons in every case, but it's not as important here as it might be with, for example, berries or fruits or leafy greens. If you go to environmental working groups Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, you can see a report they produce every year on the most and least pesticide contaminated foods, but nuts are not a major concern in that regard. Holly said, interested in how to provide food security in a desert reservation, please. Holly, thank you so much for asking. Not sure if you're talking about an indigenous reservation, but it sounds like maybe you are. I'm so grateful that you're asking this question. It is critically important. So here are a few ideas you may find helpful. One is community gardens. Even in arid climates, community gardens can thrive when they use techniques like raised beds, composting, and drip irrigation to conserve water. And growing drought-resistant native plants and crops that require less water can be a key to success. Sometimes getting some tree cover over an area can help keep it cooler. But community gardens can be a wonderful way to enhance food security. Investing in greenhouses and hydroponics can be beneficial. Greenhouses with controlled environments or hydroponic systems that grow plants without soil can produce food year-round in desert regions. And they also use a lot less water and allow for growing a wider variety of crops. Of course, greenhouses are mainly relevant when you're wanting to grow in cold climates or in the wintertime. You also may find sprouting to be helpful. This is a form of hydroponic gardening that anybody can do in their own kitchen. And it's affordable. It's very little infrastructure to set up. And the bottom line is you get huge amounts of bang for the buck because seeds, when they're sprouted, become far more potent, far more bioavailable in their nutrients, but they also have more nutrients in them. And it's an incredibly fast way to get food. In as little as 4 days, you're feasting on super fresh as can be, vegetables and seeds at the same time because you've still got the benefit of the seed that started it out. You can also promote indigenous food knowledge. Many traditional desert plants like prickly pear cactus or mesquite or amaranth are very nutritious and well suited to desert climates. Emphasizing these foods can improve food security while connecting people to their cultural roots. And then water conservation and rainwater harvesting can be great things to do in deserts. Using technologies like rainwater catchment and gray water recycling and drip irrigation can all be helpful with limited water supplies. And then education and skill building, teaching community members about sustainable agriculture and permaculture principles and food preservation techniques can empower them to take more control of their food security. And keep in mind that a whole foods plant-based approach is ideal, especially in desert environments, because plant foods tend to require less water and resources than animal-based foods, which makes them more sustainable. And by focusing on local and sustainable and plant-based solutions, food security in desert reservations could become more achievable and more resilient. Ingrid said, hello from Arizona, another desert climate here. I'm only eating organic plants with some exceptions like avocados and mushrooms. Going to regular supermarkets, I find they have a very limited assortment of organic vegetables. It does not matter what season we're in, I find the same fruits and vegetables throughout the year, as this is what corporate allows in their store. As I live in the desert in my community, they're not allowing people to have a garden due to the high water use, it's difficult to grow anything. Also, plants do not like to grow in 110 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade, if you can even provide it somewhere on the property. If anyone has some insights on how I can get more variety in my life. Well, Ingrid, great questions. Of course, one question is going to be, are there any stores that offer more variety, maybe a natural food store, even if you have to drive farther, get it onto your regular routine. Frozen foods can also be a good way to preserve fresh fruits and vegetables, so you can get them in quantity somewheres and then drive back in a cooler, get them in the freezer, and then you'll have them for a long time if you don't have a store close by that has the range that you want. Sprouts, I mentioned it earlier, I'll say it again, you can grow sprouts in your kitchen. That can be a wonderful way to add some freshness to your life affordably and easily. For those who are looking at not so much fruits and vegetables, but natural foods in general and are in rural environments, if you're in the United States, you can go to Thrive Market. If you go to foodrevolution.org/Thrive Market, you can access a $60 free gift and $25 off your first order. Thrive Market is an online grocery store selling natural foods. It's kind of like Whole Foods meets Amazon meets Costco. It's a membership community. They offer discounted prices. It's lower than you can get it for in stores. It's shipped to your door. They ship all over the United States. Again, foodrevolution.org/Thrive Market could be a helpful resource. Not for fruits and vegetables necessarily, but for all the other sort of dry goods, if you will. Molly said, how do kids get enough protein and other nutrients that are difficult to get, like B12, on a plant-based diet, especially when picky eaters? Well, Molly, there are several pieces here. You talked about B12, you talked about protein, and you talked about picky eaters. So first of all, protein is not difficult to get enough of with Whole Foods plant-based. The thing here is Whole Foods is critical. If a diet is vegan and it's got a lot of added oils and added sugars or it's deficient in calories, then protein can be a challenge. But there is enough protein in pretty much all whole plant foods that if you get a diversity of them and you eat enough calories, you'll get enough. That said, legumes are a critical building block, especially for kids, and soy, most of all, is sort of like the crown jewel of the legume family. Tofu, tempeh, edamame, various other soy milks, those can all be great products to include. Now, for picky eaters, here's a few thoughts, okay? And I'm sure some parents here can relate. I'm a dad myself. So remember your mealtime role as a parent. As a parent, your responsibility is to provide healthy food options. Your child is going to decide how much to eat, and you want to create a stress-free mealtime environment and support them in developing their intuitive eating habits and listen to their own bodies. But at the end of the day, when you have a healthy food environment, they can choose between various healthy options in various quantities and go from there. What you don't want to do is start introducing junk foods into the home as a way to get them to eat something, anything, and then they start to just go that way. So as much as possible, you want to create a healthy food environment starting as early as possible, and that gets normalized for them. We literally had our kids one time screaming, having a meltdown because we were out of broccoli. It's possible. Number 2, introduce foods again and again. Repeatedly expose children to new foods and don't just give it to them once and then they reject it and then you stop trying. It often takes several attempts before a kid will try or accept something. So consistency helps to build familiarity. Number 3, present plant foods in a fun way. Make them more appealing by making them colorful or creative, shaping foods into fun designs or serving rainbow-colored veggie sticks. And finger foods are really great for kids particularly. Our kids have always loved dipping veggies in hummus. We actually make our homemade salad dressing, and then we have whole lettuce leaves and chunks of different vegetables like tomatoes or avocado or cucumber or peppers, and they'll dip them straight in the dressing and eat like this. So finger foods can be a great way to make it more interesting and engaging for kids. And then it's okay to try a sneakier approach sometimes, like hiding fruits or veggies in things like smoothies or muffins or even lasagna or mac and cheese. Blend up into your cheesy vegan sauce little vegetables and help ensure your kids get nutrients during picky eating phases. Also, involving kids in meal planning and preparation, helping them to prepare meals can empower them and make them more excited to try the healthy foods they created. And especially growing gardens with kids. When kids grow food, they're a lot more likely to eat that same food. They're invested, they're connected, they know where the food comes from, and they feel like they're a part of it. It's a great way. Studies show that when children grow up with gardens, and especially when they spend time in those gardens, they eat more vegetables. Also, speak with enthusiasm about the foods you serve. You know, don't go over the top. You've got your own relationship with your kids, but a lot of times we're like, broccoli. Oh my God, the dessert's come out. You know, like we get all excited. Notice what message you're sending about what is exciting and what is worth celebrating. And if you can model for your kids that you are excited about this hummus, oh my God, this hummus is so good. Like just share your excitement, right? Feel it. And then maybe that will transmit to them as well. And then of course, especially as kids get older, make mealtime educational. Using meal times to teach kids about the benefit of plant foods through fun facts and simple lessons can turn meal times into learning opportunities. Now, you also talked about nutrients and getting B12. Well, B12 is something you should probably be getting from a supplement, and so should your kids. So if you're eating fortified plant milks, for example, then that may be enough, but it's usually recommended to have some form of supplemental B12 for just about everybody, but especially for people who are strictly vegan. Food Revolution tends to recommend a product called Complement. If you go to foodrevolution.org/complement, you can find out more about it. And that's a supplement. It's pills, so it's not necessarily for little kids. Although when our kids were little, we would pop open the capsules and squirt them on things. You know, it contains B12 and D3 and magnesium and selenium and zinc and DHA and EPA. And iodine, so just critical pieces that are often harder to get on a plant-based diet or even on any diet. And that's why it's called a complement. It's meant to complement a whole foods plant-based diet. So you're eating lots of great things, and then you take this to get a few critical pieces covered. Marcella said, why is there such a disagreement about fats, eggs, cheese, etc.? Well, Marcella, great question. Let me touch on this for a second, because there's so many different opinions. Have you all noticed how many different opinions there are online about what you should eat and how you should live and what's healthy and what's not? You can literally find experts saying just about anything. The one thing maybe they can all agree on is vegetables, but no, there's even some experts saying vegetables are bad. We could all agree that drinking water is good, but no, there are people telling us it's not. So you got everything out there. So why? Okay, well, one of the big things is marketing and corporate interests. When a company can make some money selling anything, of course they're going to have a vested interest in promoting it and telling us it's good for us. Heck, even Coca-Cola markets Coke as a great way to solve the world's need for more hydration, right? So it's like we've got all these things out there, and at the end of the day, they are pushing their products. That's one thing. Number two is we have health influencers who make money by being contrarian. What we've seen is that what's new, what's different, sells. Nobody's going to make $1 million by saying, hey, amazing study comes out telling us what we already knew 50 years ago. Like, it's just not news, right? And it's not engaging, and it doesn't drive eyeballs. But if you can say, oh my gosh, if you eat tomatoes, that's the reason you're sick. Here's why. If you can say, oh my gosh, legumes are making you sick. Everything we thought we knew about health has just been proven wrong. Well, that's going to get people's attention, right? They realize, what am I wrong about? What have I been missing? And then they get curious. So that's a big dynamic that keeps people constantly bopping about from thing to thing to thing. Number 3, we've got biochemical individuality. You can always find outliers. You can always find anecdotal stories for just about everything, and you'll always find some individuals who defy the odds. So because we're all unique, because each of us is the only us on the planet, we do have to listen to our own bodies and our own truth. There is no one-size-fits-all perfect formula for what to eat and how to live in order to be healthy. There are literally probably some people in the world who are healthy or not exercising, but that's not true for most of us. Most of us do better when we eat better, stress less, love more, and move more. Okay? So, but biochemical individuality is a real thing, and you've got to listen to yourself and your own lived experience. I'm also a big fan of looking at the data. When most people, most of the time, are healthy or eating certain ways, to me that matters. To me that's important to share, and I'd rather do the thing that's going to be helpful 90% of the time, right? While also listening to my own body. Even if I know that you can always find 10% anecdotal case studies, individual people who don't fit that pattern. If we highlight those stories, we can make everybody think that's how it is. But that's marketing. That's not science. Then we've got replacement bias. When you eat one thing instead of another, both what is in your diet and what is not in your diet become factors. So if, for example, you were to replace beef with eggs, you'd probably see some health benefits, right? If you were to replace fried bacon, with cheese, you'd probably see some health benefits. But that doesn't mean you've moved to optimal, right? So we've got to look at what you're cutting out and what you're replacing it with. And people will compare, for example, beef burgers to highly processed veggie burgers and say, oh, there's nutritionally and from a health perspective, there's a bit of an improvement. Not huge, right? But if we go from beef to beans, we get dramatic change. So replacement bias is a critical piece here, understanding those distinctions. Some people can go on a vegan junk food diet, miss key nutrients, and then do better if they add back animal products. So that's another factor, is whole foods. If you're basing your diet around added sugars and bottled oils, you're going to be missing a whole lot of critical things that you need in your diet. In that context, you may find yourself better eating some animal products. But that doesn't mean that animal product heavy diet is optimal for human health. What it means is that we need to base our diet around whole foods and make sure we're getting our key nutrient needs met. And then you also mentioned fat and different opinions about fat. Well, fat is a macronutrient. At the end of the day, macronutrient quality is critical. You could have more or less fats or carbohydrates and be healthy, depending on your unique health context and situation and the quality of those fats and carbohydrates. So you want quality fats, you want quality carbs, and you want quality proteins. Put all that together, the macronutrient levels could vary, but the importance of quality is always going to matter. So I hope that helps shed a bit of light on this critical topic. Marcella. Tony said, what test is required to determine your TMAO levels? A blood test? Well, Tony, thanks for asking. So trimethylamine and oxide, or TMAO, is measured through a blood test. Yes, you can ask your doctor for it. It measures the levels of a metabolite produced by gut bacteria that can help predict the risk of heart attack, stroke, and death. Sharmila said, hi, Ocean. I'm a vegetarian. I eat lots of vegetables and love fruits. Very keen on learning about a plant-based diet, though I am diabetic and not sure if it's right for me. I'd appreciate some guidance. Well, Sharmila, thank you so much for asking. So yeah, the research is remarkable on this because we've heard, diabetes is a disease that's predominantly characterized by excessively high blood sugar levels, which is linked to insulin resistance and so forth. Therefore, we think we should eat less sugars, right? And it's true, added sugars are no friend to your health, but it turns out that fruit and vegetables both are actually linked to lower rates of type 2 diabetes. So you probably do want to eat these foods and enjoy them. That said, if you're diabetic and you're plant-based, you can probably go further, and there are some key steps you can take. And I'm going to recommend you check out the Tackling Type 2 Masterclass that we created with a dietitian, Brenda Davis. If you go to type 2, the number 2, TYPE2, .foodrevolution.org. Again, that's type2.foodrevolution.org. You can find out about it and join in the masterclass that Brenda and I host and Brenda teaches. And then from there, there's a course we created with Brenda, also called Tackling Type 2. Strongly encourage you to check that out. Antoinette said, I sent messages yesterday regarding osteoporosis. I have excruciating pain in my legs, knees, backs, and hands. I cannot walk because of the osteoporosis. I've lost my balance and I'm dizzy. Can you please help me? Are there foods I could eat that would improve my situation? I would very much appreciate an answer. Well, Antoinette, I'm so sorry that you are struggling with this excruciating pain and that your osteoporosis has become so severe, and we're just sending you so much love in the situation. And first, I want you to know there is hope, and there are things you can do, and we're here to support you, okay? So first, a little background on strong bones. So nurturing strong bones requires a lot of nutrients, including plant-based protein is very important. Calcium, we all hear about that. It is true. Vitamin D is really, really important, and it's part of what helps the calcium get into your bones instead of into your arteries. Magnesium, vitamin K2, which seems to work with vitamin D and calcium in concert to help your body get the calcium where it's needed. Also, phosphorus is important, not phosphoric acid, which is very bad for bones, but phosphorus is healthy. Vitamin B12 is really important. Vitamin C is critical. Also potassium, copper, and zinc. All of this is possible to get from a plant-based diet with a bit of supplementation in a few cases. I think you're probably especially going to want to look for supplementation for your vitamin D unless you get a lot of sun exposure. Vitamin B12, which is important for almost all of us to take, even up to a quarter of omnivores are deficient in B12. But most vegans are deficient in B12 if they don't take a supplement. And then you may also want to get some supplemental vitamin K2, especially if you're vegan. It's abundant in a food called natto, which is very popular in certain parts of Asia, not widely consumed in North America. It is a fermented soy food. But if you don't have about a teaspoon a day of natto, then you may want to take some supplemental K2 as well. Those are the supplement pieces. There is an abundance of plant foods that are high in calcium. It's possible to get plenty of calcium from plants. To ensure your best absorption of calcium from plants, you may want to make sure you're eliminating or dramatically reducing your intake of alcohol. You want to steer clear of sodas that contain phosphoric acid because phosphoric acid can be harmful to your bones in high amounts. And then I already mentioned vitamin K2. It's really important for strong bones. It's manufactured by bacteria in the gut. They love to make it out of vitamin K1. K1 is found abundantly in a lot of plant foods. So one of the best ways to nurture vitamin K2 is by including plenty of fiber in your diet, including prebiotics and fermented foods, all of which can foster a balanced gut microbiome and support healthy production of K2. But you also may want to consider eating a half teaspoon a day of natto, which is, as I mentioned, a fermented soy food, or getting a supplement so you get some direct K2 to make sure you're getting enough. And of course, you've probably heard this, but incorporating weight-bearing exercises into your routine can be massively important for bone strength. Simple activities like walking for a few minutes, a few times a week can make a big difference, and then adding on to that, getting up to 30 minutes at a time, super helpful. Of course, check with your physician before starting a new exercise regimen to ensure it's safe for you. If you're dealing with a really severe situation like it sounds like you are, we want to make sure you're getting appropriate guidance from a healthcare provider. But in general, weight-bearing exercise is super healthy and important for developing strong bones. It seems that when they're under pressure, bones get stronger. I've also been very impressed recently with studies on creatine and how it can help with bone strength and muscle strength, which tend to go together, by the way. When we're stronger, we exercise more, which also makes our bones stronger. So creatine is a very interesting compound. If you go to foodrevolution.org/creatine. You can find out about a particular product that we feel good about, or just go to foodrevolution.org and type creatine in the search bar, and you can learn more about creatine through an article we wrote on the topic. All right, folks. Well, now I want to tell you about today's extended interviews. We have 3 amazing extended interviews today. As soon as we finish the live broadcast today, they will go on as part of the replay period until tomorrow morning when we prepare for tomorrow's broadcasts. And these are also, of course, part of the empowerment package when you have them for life. Today's 3 featured extended interviews are with Dr. Alan Desmond on healing your gut, how to eat for digestive wellness. Also with Dr. Michael Greger, the guy you saw wearing the broccoli shirt, on how to prevent and reverse disease, what the research says. And with Dr. Robin Chutkin on the microbiome solution, how to heal your body from the inside out. All 3 of these are fantastic interviews. Strongly encouraged, if you're interested in your gut health, check them out. And I want to thank all the people who are participating in this summit, all the comments, all the questions. It means so much to us. The reason our team and my dad and I do this summit is because we want to support you. And I love that you're engaging and participating and sharing so deeply. It's beautiful to read. It's beautiful to share this journey with you. And I also want to let you all know, when you purchase an empowerment package, you're choosing to own it all for life, and you're also supporting our mission. You're making it possible for us to spread the word and grow this movement to many, many, many more people. Thank you particularly to some of our recent new empowerment package owners: Susan from Australia, Kimberly from West Virginia, Zalinda from Texas, Tammy from Montana, Eric from California, Susan from Nevada, Daniel from South Africa, Todd from Utah, Crystal from North Carolina, Toby from Ohio, Anne from Michigan, Manoj from India, Mark from Florida. Thank you all, and everyone else who's stepping up and choosing to own it all for life. We are so grateful for your participation and for your support. Now I want to introduce our recipes of the day. Every day of this summit, we have 3 more amazing, delicious, plant-powered, feasty recipes from FRN's lead dietitian and recipe developer, Nicole Andrea Russert. Today we have sweet potato mini drop biscuits. Savor the sweet side of health with these biscuits, which are little delights, and they're a gut's best friend and a taste bud's dream. They prove you can have your biscuit and feel good about eating it too. Whether you're spreading on some nut butter for a snack that's better than the rest, or dunking them in your favorite plant-powered super stew, these biscuits are sure to root their way into your heart and diet. Next, we've got velvety asparagus soup, which adds a splash of vitality to your meals, blending smooth, rich flavors with the digestive benefits of fiber-laden asparagus. This is a versatile companion to numerous plant-based dishes, enhancing any meal, and it takes just 30 minutes, including prep time. And finally, we've got farmer's market salad with miso peanut dressing. Even without a trip to the farmer's market, you can still enjoy the freshness of farm to table with this amazing salad and dressing. The salad's like a rainbow on your plate. It's full of veggies that do wonders for your gut, thanks to the prebiotics and probiotics in the mix. It's super tasty, making it a treat for your taste buds while keeping your gut happy and healthy. And it's sure to bring a smile to your face with every bite. Every day of this summit, I hope you're getting to enjoy some of these amazing recipes. And if you want to go further and have more recipes for life, make sure you do check out Powered by Plants. It comes out next month. You can get pre-orders now and have it be one of the first people to have it when it gets published. We got our advanced copies, and I've already shared this, but I'm just so excited because it's just so beautiful, and it also dives deep into nutrition. We go into the critical nutrients that you need and how to get them on a whole foods plant-based diet, as well as looking at the few cases where supplementation can be beneficial. But mainly we're focusing on recipes that taste amazing that deliver the nutrients you need from food. Nicole said, "Hi Ocean, my super senior mom has a question since she won't believe me. She's really focused on trying to understand the gut microbiome. She eats my vegan meals, but also eats some fish, eggs, and chicken on her own during the month. She'd like to reduce gas, but doesn't believe me they are a source, especially when it continues a few days. Could you help? Also, she wants to build muscle, but says all the books she reads says she needs animal protein to do so, or it would take massive amounts of plants. I told her it's about the amino acids and how so many great athletes and weightlifters are plant-based. Would you be willing to tell her via our TV screen that a healthy whole food vegan diet and maybe some supplements and a light weight routine would get her stronger? Any books you recommend for her? She may be a senior, but she's spry and sassy, and I give credit to the vegan meals she gets from me. Thank you, and thank you so much for doing this. She's my person. I'll be taking notes as I need more energy from myself and to wrangle my little sass master. Nicole, love it. Hello to you and to your mom. Hello, Nicole's mom. I'm Ocean Robbins here, officially telling you via your TV screen, yes, you can build muscle. You can be strong, you can be vibrant, and you can be healthy on a whole foods plant-based diet. So a few things. First of all, you asked about gas. Lots of elements to that. We've talked about that today. Key thing here is you want to nurture a healthy microbiome. You're still going to have some gas. It's natural and healthy to have some, but you want to nurture the good bacteria in your gut, and you do that with fiber. But you want to add it slowly if you're having troubles with gas so that your body doesn't get overwhelmed with too much activity at once. Some enzymes can really help, especially with beans, and fermented foods can help a lot too. Building muscle. Yes, you can be strong on a plant-based diet. Protein helps. It does. Especially when you get older, a lot of folks tend to consume lower amounts of calories, and that means their overall protein volume will be going down, which means you got to lean into that. Make sure you're eating enough total food, but also eat enough of the protein-rich plant foods. This morning, I shared this a couple days ago. I did it again today. I had a smoothie. I had 2 cups of unsweetened Eden soy milk, 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, a banana, some vanilla extract, put in some frozen mango, 40 grams of protein before breakfast. Tasted pretty good. So that's just a thought, right? There's lots of ways to get your protein up. You may want to consider supplementing with some creatine if you're elderly and you're wanting to build muscle. A lot of research on this and its beneficial effects, especially when you combine it with some working out. Muscle strength will increase. If you go to foodrevolution.org, you can see our article on creatine and its benefits and the science on it. Books, well, there's lots of great books. Many of our speakers in the summit have written books. Of course, I'm most excited about Powered by Plants. I keep talking about it because it's coming out next month, and I think it's really potent. And we have the first chapter is about protein, so you'll learn more about that as well. Also, I want to let you know, for all of you folks who are wondering if it's possible to be healthy in the later years of life or while aging, my dad created a masterclass on how to learn from the secrets of the world's healthiest elders, and also a course that flows from it on unlocking longevity. If you go to longevity.foodrevolution.org, you can sign up for the free 15-minute mini masterclass, and from there, get a special discount on the course. Again, that's longevity.foodrevolution.org. Donna said, does heating fermented foods reduce its benefits? Well, Donna, in general, yes, it does, because if you cook bacteria, they're going to die, right? And you want those beneficial bacteria that are in your fermented foods. But there's still a lot of benefit to the fermented foods, even if they are heated, because of something called postbiotics. You see, as bacteria are doing their fermentation thing, they're also excreting various compounds that turn out to have tremendous health benefits. This is one of the reasons why taking probiotics misses a lot of the point, because you want prebiotics, which is the food the bacteria eat. You want probiotics, which is the bacteria themselves, and you want postbiotics, which is the compounds they produce as they live. When you just take probiotic supplements, you miss out on the first and the third of those. So fermented foods give you all of that. Now, when you cook them, you're still going to get some prebiotics, and you'll probably still get some postbiotics, but not the probiotics. Tempeh is a great example of a fermented food that is super healthy, but you actually want to cook it, and it's still great for gut health. So it's still good. Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Fermented foods are awesome even when they're cooked. But yeah, if you can eat them raw, other than tempeh, that's probably for the best. Doreen said, what do you say about date as a sweetener? I love this presentation. I'm a listener for the last 3 years, and I've learned so much. Well, Doreen, thank you so much for asking. First of all, let me step back and talk about sweeteners in general. So first of all, there's no perfect solution. From a health standpoint, the best sweeteners are fruits, like bananas and mangoes and berries and apples and pineapple. And if you want something sweeter, then dates and date paste are pretty awesome. Dates deliver not just sugars, but also fiber that slows down digestion and some wonderful other phytonutrients. If you want something more intensely sweet for certain kinds of baking, then maple syrup or honey or molasses are probably reasonable options in moderation for most people. At FRN, we love sharing amazing recipes that enable you to enjoy whole foods, plant-based foods that are super delicious, including dessert recipes. And if you go to foodrevolution.org, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of articles and also lots of great recipes. And if you end up deciding to join Whole Life Club, which is our ongoing membership community, you'll find over 1,200 amazing recipes, and you can search by all sorts of factors, including specific ingredients you want to include or omit, as well as obviously desserts or how to use dates and date paste, and you'll find lots of recipes with them. So many options. So keep cooking, keep learning, keep enjoying. All right, folks, we're now approaching the end of day 3 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. Again, to express your opinions on today's episode and the summit so far and to find out what other folks are saying, post and engage in the comments section on our broadcast page. Make sure you refresh the comments using the button you see there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Come on back and join us tomorrow when we go live at 7:45 a.m. Pacific Time, 10:45 Eastern, 2:45 p.m. GMT, or at 11 Eastern when we start rolling episode 4, Beauty and Vitality, How to Nurture Healthy Skin, Hair, Nails, and Radiance from the Inside Out. It's going to be amazing. So please come back and join us for that. And in the meanwhile, you can post your comments and share in the conversation on the broadcast page. You can catch and share the replays right here on this page. After I'm done live here, the video will automatically be available on replay. You can watch today's in-depth expert interviews. You can check out the empowerment package and how you can own it all for life. You can enjoy our recipes of the day and the recipe demo video, which will also be right at the bottom of our broadcast page once we go on replay mode. And most of all, enjoy a wonderful, healthy, and thriving day. This is Ocean Robbins, signing off from day 3 in the Food Revolution Summit. And now here's a peek at what's coming up tomorrow. Beauty isn't found in a bottle. It's a radiance that emanates from who we are, from the vitality that we embody. So what supports healthy skin, hair, teeth, and a natural, radiant beauty from within?
It comes from the inside out. We are pretty much all over aesthetics on our planet, very into what a person looks like, and that says beauty, but it doesn't really say beauty as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you can be gorgeous looking aesthetically and a demon on the inside. So beauty starts in the heart, as far as I'm concerned.
There's an opportunity for us to feed our own beauty, to contribute to ourselves from the inside out, to treat ourselves the way that we want to be treated so that we can bring beauty into the world, and to realize that beauty isn't just about appearance. It's about how we're being. It's about how we're radiating energy. It's about the compassion and the presence that we bring into the moment.
In this episode, we'll explore the powerful connection between what we eat and how we look and feel. We'll explore the science behind nutrition and natural beauty, showing how a diet rich in certain foods can enhance your innate beauty. Get ready to expand your self-confidence, joy, and love of who you are from the inside out.
The reason that healthy choices are worth the effort is because you are precious. You are absolutely precious. You are here for a reason. Your life has value. You have value. And you deserve to feel as well as you possibly can and as happy as you possibly can while you have the privilege to be in this body. That's what healthy choices can help you with. It's that simple.
Learn how to eat for beauty. Your life is on the line.
Let's do this.